been a fun day or two with all the cut downs, and now
Yeah.
they're building up the practice squads.
Yeah, the 53s now the practice.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, gentlemen, good evening and welcome everyone to the Sports Crib. As you can see down on the bottom of the page, you can subscribe, donate on our Cash App, $ JEQ3. All proceeds go to promote our program and just keep it commercials as quick as possible. So we welcome our guest tonight, Miss Tiffany Roderick. Tiffany, how are you doing this evening?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
So I was just getting into it a little bit before we actually went live.
Okay.
Where you currently reside, and I heard you say that you lived out here in California, Pasadena.
That's right. I'm in Pasadena, California, home of the Rose Parade, the Rose Bowl, the historic Rose Bowl.
Nice.
Mhm.
Now, since tell us about yourself. I was first attracted when I saw your picture because of that Dallas Cowboy hat. Now, being as I'm a Steeler fan, you can
Yeah, I see that.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into sports and your background before we go into First and 10.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Oxnard, California, and as you know, Oxnard today is the home of where the Dallas Cowboys have training camp. However, when I was growing up, the Dallas Cowboys had training camp in Thousand Oaks, California, which is about 30 miles south of my home. And as a child, my dad, who was also a coach, my father coached basketball, track, baseball, and football. So as a child, he would take us to see the Dallas Cowboys before it was a huge marketing extravaganza during training camp. And those were times that laid near and dear to my heart. And I am a fan of all sports, but football is where my heart is and my passion.
Oxnard. I've had some great times in Oxnard. A lot of great boxers in Oxnard. A lot of great
Yes,
boxing teams in Oxnard.
that's right.
That was my other career. So you, I saw this First and 10 LLC, and the sense that caught my attention was empowers women about football. And I can remember, he's probably gone back quite some time, but when I was married, when the football came on, the wife and her girlfriends went here, went there, she didn't know the difference between a tight end and a Tootsie Roll.
Right.
I mean, so when I saw this, I'm like, well, okay, let's see what this is all about. So tell us about First and 10.
Sure. So mainly with First and 10, I create experiences for women so that we can learn more about football. I make it relatable to women. A woman may not know much about the Lombardi Trophy, but we know about Tiffany's jewelry. And if I can tell them that Tiffany makes the Lombardi Trophy, then they can make that connection, right? So I try to make things relatable so that women can understand it and that we can enjoy the game with our spouses and family. And, we can be the makers of the hot wings and we can also enjoy the game with our spouses and our families.
That's awesome.
Now, was this something that was COVID related, or was this an idea that you got before COVID?
That's actually a great question. So before COVID, I had this idea. I had a coworker who was from Egypt, and she didn't know anything about baseball. And we were actually about to go to a Padres game, as a group. And I said to her, I really want you to go. She was, new to the country, and I thought it would be a great experience for her. And she's like, Tiffany, I don't know anything about baseball. It's not going to be fun for me. And I said, okay, I have 2 weeks. I'm going to teach you about baseball. And I called it Tiffany's Boot Camp, and she got it. Amazingly, she got it within those 2 weeks. Of course, it normally doesn't take me 2 weeks to teach baseball, but we also had to work full time. But she got it. And I said, I think I have something here, but baseball is not my love. I understand it. I get it. And I can explain it. Football is really my love. And also, although it's tougher to teach, that's something that I decided that I wanted to take on, and it inspired me. Now, I had a few personal goals that I wanted to achieve first. And so when COVID rolled around, I was actually working on my master's full time. I was working for a Fortune 500 company full time, and my dad was critically ill. I had a lot going on, and I decided that this could be a good time to launch First and 10, just because people were looking to connect. And, we had that safer at home. LA had COVID really, really bad as far as, not being able to go anywhere and do anything. And people were really looking to connect. So I started doing online classes. My first class was Introduction to the Super Bowl, and it was in early 2021. And I was Zoom bombed, and I'm not sure if you've heard of being Zoom bombed, but they completely took over my screen. The filthiest, most racist things that you can think of were on my screen, and I was devastated. I had a full class of women, and I went for a walk the next day, and just really thinking, because I knew that some people had taken time out, my class wouldn't be as full. And then I thought about what First and 10 really means, and how every day we get a new set of downs. We can start from the beginning. And I thought about the 4 tenets that I created of the First and 10 mentality: being relentless, being advocates for the community and for women, being coachable, and evolving. And those are things that I like to add to my personal life, and that I like to also spread to whoever I see, including the women in my classes.
Now, now that you said that your class started with an Egyptian lady, I can kind of understand why you specified American football.
Yes.
Because the rest
Yes,
of the world.
I always say American football because that's when you go to another country and you say football, they're going to think soccer, right? And I'm thinking long term when I use that phrase.
So, what actually motivated you to specifically on teaching women about American football? And what was the significance of you being a woman, of First and 10 being a woman-owned business?
So I come from a very large blended family. I have 6 brothers, and I grew up around a lot of boys, a lot of men, and growing up and going to sporting events and sports parties, just like you said, the women would be over in one side and the men would be in the other side. And I would feel, what do I do? Because I really love this game. I want to watch the game. I understand what's going on. And, but that didn't really click until I really started moving up in corporate America. And I realized that this was kind of a tool in my networking toolbox, because I worked in a male-dominated space, and I had something to talk about, to folks on Monday, Tuesday. We could talk about the game, and I could talk about it from a perspective of knowledge and from a perspective of understanding. And I thought that every woman should have the opportunity to do this. And I wanted to be able to share that. Today, I went to the nail shop, and about 10 years ago, when I would go to the nail shop, there would be all women. But today, it's commonplace for men to go get their nails done, right? And it can be half and half. And so I'm hoping to bring that kind of mentality to women so they can understand and feel comfortable that it's a welcome space. There are now 8 full-time women in the NFL coaching, and it's also a career opportunity for women. There's money to be made if you want to bet on games, fantasy football, all of these things. So I want women to be comfortable and be able to have these conversations if they come up.
So how do you believe your background in communication and organizational leadership enhances your work at First and 10?
Sure. So as far as my background in communication, it definitely helps me to tailor to my audience. So if I have a group of women who are in a sorority and they have a particular set of tenets, I can break down and tailor that class so that it is specific to them. If I have a group of Girl Scouts, I can break it down for them. So it really taught me how to reach a different set of audiences. So as far as my master's degree is concerned, people with my degree are HR managers. They help with change management. So as I grow and scale the business, that will definitely come in handy. And it just gives me the thought process of where I can grow and how to grow, and to be able to manage that by myself while I have to.
So what kind of training programs or resources do you offer at First and 10 Industries to help women learn about American football?
Yes. So right now I have a group of about 700 women. And on Facebook, it's women only. Every single day at 1 o'clock, I post a football term. So they learn about something football related every day. It's football news, football related. Sometimes I go live. I hosted a free football 101 class because my next class is going to be about defense. So I instead of having to reinvent the wheel, I wanted to go in there and say, hey, this is my football 101 class. You know, don't ask me how many yards that someone can get a new set of downs, because that's literally the name. You know, literally the name of my company, and I'm explaining this to you now for free. So, if somebody wants to take a First and 10 class, there are 3 ways that they can do that. So I periodically host events. My last event was the Fundamentals of Fantasy Football that recently ended, and I have a group of women who are playing fantasy football with me this year. I have pre-scheduled classes set, and if a group of ladies want to get together and just have a group of friends, a private lesson, I offer free consultations so that they can have a class as well.
Well, you kind of answered the next question when I was going to ask you about inclusivity and supportive and empowerment. But can you tell us about some of your success stories about women you trained and gone on to excel within the sports field?
Sure, absolutely. So I also have a background in training, and I have a mentor from my former company. She actually lives in Cleveland, and she was like, you know, Tiffany, I'm not really a football fan, but whatever you do, I'm going to support you. And so I said, fine. And so she's come to a few of my classes, and, you know, last year she sent me a text and she said, Tiffany, what do you think we're going to do about that quarterback situation? And I was like, yeah, you know, she's interested. I got her interested in something that she had absolutely no interest in. And that's just a place to start. You know, the thing that I want to bring home, if you have the opportunity to take a look at my website, is that every woman can relate to football. Every woman, every single day, has to go through obstacles to reach their goal. We have to re-strategize to figure out how to get our goal. We have our network, whether that's our spouse, our pastor, our therapist, you know, our front 5 that are helping us reach those goals. So I want to make sure that we find those ways to relate. And I think that once that hits home, with us, with us ladies, then we are invested because we feel that it's something, it's more than just, I've heard women say it's just a bunch of men fighting over a ball. It's more than that when you understand what's happening.
What are your future plans and aspirations for First and 10 in terms of expanding or reaching goals or your impact?
Sure. So I planted that seed just a little bit during our conversation as I was referring to it as American football. The NFL is going global. I definitely want to be able to teach worldwide. At some point, I do not want to be the person delivering these courses. I want to be able to hand a playbook to a young lady and be able to go out and do these classes. And, that's really the goal, is to be able to spread this word to other women and to enhance my reach.
I also saw that you teach women about American college football. So what's your opinion on the creation of these new big super conferences in college football?
I think, if you look at the draft last year or this past draft year, there were about 62 members of the draft that came from the SEC. And, I think it becomes a little bit unfair when you think about once you get to the NFL level, right? There's a salary cap and everybody's kind of on this level playing field. But, Alabama has all this money and, Georgia has all this money. But, Jackson State or the smaller HBCUs, those young men could be as talented, may have had whatever issue with visibility, because that has a lot to do with it sometimes, and wasn't able to get on that big stage. And because those bigger schools are able to get in front of the camera and get that notoriety, it's unfortunate. And I think there should be a way to make it a little bit more fair. I haven't thought of that way yet, but it's a huge advantage that these super conferences, ACC, SEC, Big Ten, Pac 12 or 10. It just depends on what's going on there right now, with UCLA and USC leaving.
Right.
Yeah.
So my last question before I turn you over to the panel, as a Cowboy fan, do you think that the Cowboys are more recognized as a brand than as a team that hasn't won a national championship in 27 years?
Sure. Hey, that's the question that I get asked all the time. As a Cowboys fan, I can't be sensitive, right? But, listen, so the average NFL team is worth $5.1 billion. So every team is a brand. The Cowboys have just done it better than any other team at $9.2 billion. And, with 5 championships that they've had, in the Super Bowl era, I feel as if, if that was something easier to achieve, there would be more teams that have them, right? Who's caught up in over 30 years? The Steelers, the 49ers.
I love the front runner conference.
But there's 32 teams. There's 32 teams, right? So if it was something easier to achieve, there would be more teams that have it. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to turn you over to my stat man
I don't know if he's talking about me or Bill.
Bill, let the man with the uniform start first.
All right, so I'll take it first, but Bill's really the stat man. First of all, I love what you're doing. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Stuff.
Thank you.
I'm curious, what area of the game do you find, whether it's women or men, because I'm sure there are men who probably, once they find out where your level is, want to know things too. What area of the game do they tend to want to be taught more or learn more about? Is there one area, or is it just the broad scope of the game?
So women definitely have, that I've noticed, and from the surveys that I've sent from my classes, have an interest. They're just like the general public, right? The game is moving toward a more offensive game, and that's in line with what women think. Because I'm just a defense girl at heart, and I believe that once you understand that and once you grasp that, you really have a better respect for the game. That's why I'm teaching that first this year. And yeah, so but women are definitely more in line with the rest of the country. We just like to see a bunch of offense.
More
Just
passing,
fine.
more
You know?
Yeah, more
Yeah.
points. Yeah.
Exactly.
Bill, our other communications major here.
Yeah.
Bill.
So hello there.
Mm.
And I'm in the process of putting together a training program at my job. So
Oh,
maybe
great.
I'll bother you later
No
about that.
problem.
So first of all, thank you for what you do, and particularly for understanding that really defense is the most beautiful part of the game.
Here we go, Bill.
And so that by itself shows that you are a person of breeding, class, and taste. So I played safety, not well, but that was my position. Yeah. Oh no, trust me. I mean, when I say not well, I really mean it. But I fell in love with the fact that we had everything going against us, and it's worse now, right? It's worse now than it was in my day.
Yeah.
Because at least you were still allowed to really light people up coming over the middle, which was all I had going for me. I was undersized, I wasn't particularly fast, but I could accelerate to impact, right? I didn't have that fear of contact that normal people do. And so that was my one sort of balancing thing that I had going in my favor, is that I could run full speed into anything and it wouldn't bother me, at least when I was younger. And so that was what enabled me to at least have a place. I watched Roy Williams, obviously as a Cowboy fan, you remember this, go from being a person who was a Pro Bowler and sometimes even a guy in contention for All Pro to being out of the league in less than 3 years.
Yeah.
Based on the way the game moved, because he was a top 3 or 4 box safety. But once they had tight ends that could run 4-5 and and once they slot receivers who ran 4-3 became fairly common, Roy Williams, who was essentially an undersized linebacker, became about as useful as, a buggy whip factory. So when you talk about the game, do you also sort of talk about, you mentioned that there's more and more interested in offense, and that you and I, are devotees of defense, the most beautiful part of the game. Do you talk about what it is that's pushing defenses sort of almost off the cliff? And, if football is to be fully enjoyed, how you have to learn why it is so hard to play defense nowadays.
Yeah. So I'm big on history and understanding the history of things, and that is always injected into my classes. It's interesting that you mentioned Roy Williams, because in my free class, when I was talking about penalties, I talked about the horse collar. And it was definitely, Roy Williams with that play against T.O. that brought about the horse collar penalty. And I think it's important to understand the entertainment piece of the NFL, and the risk of the NFL, and what and how that has impacted the game. And that's definitely something that I like to point out. And I feel like that example of Roy Williams is just one, because we see it all the time, and you'll hear that penalty horse collar, but some folks don't know how it originated where it came from. And that's a clip that I like to show, because it's a little scary. It's a little cringy when you watch it. And it could be career ending to someone that a team has invested millions of dollars in.
Right. And as a 13-year-old, that's how I almost always tackled larger ball carriers. So yes, it's amazing how much the game has changed.
Yeah.
If you decide to, my recommendation, not that I'm an expert, but if you decide to teach part of your course on refs picking up the flags and ruining a game, I'm going to recommend the Lions Cowboys 2015 playoff game. That's just my recommendation.
Now, we have another gentleman here who's actually played football on a very high college level, the University of Texas alumni, Mr. Don Hayes. Don.
Oh, did we have a good connection with Don?
Hey, James.
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Before I keep going on, I'm just letting you know my connection keeps going out, so just bear with me. I'll keep logging back on if I get kicked out again.
Did you have anything for Tiffany? She's a Cowboy fan. As you noticed some of the questions that
Are you a Cowboy fan? Are you a Cowboy fan living in Texas?
No, so I'm a Cowboys fan that lives in California. So I explained to the panel that growing up, the Dallas Cowboys had a training camp in Thousand Oaks, California. So I'm about to time date stamp myself just a tad. But this was before it was a media extravaganza the way that it is now. And my brother and nephew had the opportunity to go to the locker room. Tom Landry was the coach. I met Too Tall Jones and Tony Dorsett. You know, I was a child, but I was alive. And I remember those experiences.
Good stuff.
Great stuff.
Okay. No, James.
Did
So,
you check?
as a Cowboys fan, what's your thoughts on Trey Lance coming over to backup Dak?
Yeah, so I was actually really surprised by that. But now that he's there, I think that's actually more of a plus for Trey Lance versus the Cowboys. You know, I always felt that Cooper Rush was a solid backup, but I don't think that Trey Lance had anyone in San Francisco who could mentor him or really give him guidance. And I think he'll have some of that in Dallas. So yeah, I mean, I don't know or see of a immediate impact that he'll have on the game unless Dak Prescott gets hurt or doesn't read defenses the way he's supposed to, or and ends up getting benched. But I think that it's a great opportunity for him.
If Cooper. What they used to make in the old days, single wing or whatever. What was it?
Well, I have a question because you just mentioned Trey Lance. Do you think he might be used, at least early on, similar to the way they used Dak early on when Romo was the starter? Short yardage, goal line, special packages?
I don't foresee that happening. You know, I don't know really a lot about Trey Lance's game. He only played 4 games in San Francisco. And, when I saw that, that's why I was so surprised. I was like, I don't really think he had a great, I know what they may have seen, but in live action, he didn't really have a full season or a true opportunity to show his gifts. I mean, I know it was a different scenario, but I certainly know that Alex Smith had a very long time to show his gifts in San Francisco. So I could, now that you mention it, it might be something that works, but I don't necessarily, what I do see now that McCarthy is running the offense, I definitely see that there's going to be, like you said, probably a little bit more West Coast offense and then some more implementation of the running game, with Tony Pollard and I know we picked up another running back. I can't think of his name right now, but yeah,
Thank you.
Good
no
stuff.
problem.
You with us, James?
Yeah, we might have lost James.
Okay.
There he is.
I'll go ahead. Hey, Tiffany. I really enjoyed listening to this concept. One of the things that I do is I share the agenda with my wife, Sue.
Okay.
And so I shared the concept with her and got her reaction. So I read it verbatim, unedited. And so what Sue said in regards to your concept, she said, I don't have any questions. It's a pretty fun concept. For me, growing up where I did, if you didn't understand football, you were just ignoring the game on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tiffany should expand her business and pull in experts in some more sports I find difficult to understand all the rules, like rugby, baseball with all the recent changes, and of course cricket, the mystery game.
Yes, I want the cricket. Yes, I mean,
Even
sign me up.
and she continues, even soccer. I mean, who understands the offsides rule really?
Yeah.
So that was my wife's. She didn't have a question, but that was her comment.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I have a question. So
Sure.
I really like your concept. I just wanted to hear what you thought about the Women's National Football League. And I mean, do you consider that a serious sport? Is that something that you think will expand? I know, like I was a wrestler, and I know, like in wrestling, they've opened up wrestling to women, mostly because of
Yeah.
the Title IX eliminated a
Yeah.
lot of varsity programs. Like over 300 programs were eliminated.
Yep.
But then what the sport did is they started. The good part of it is they started to create women's wrestling programs. So I just wanted to see what your thought was about this Women's National Football Conference and how that works with what you're doing.
Yeah. So I am a fan of the Women's National Football Conference. I'm certainly a fan of OJ Jenkins, the CEO of the conference. And, I follow them. I've noticed them grow, and I appreciate what they're doing. Women in full pads out there knocking it out. I appreciate, the game. And, I have this concept with any job. As long as a woman is capable of doing the job, she should be able to have the job. If she's not capable of doing the job at the same level, she shouldn't have the job, right? So if as long as I noticed that there are women's or girls flag football. I know in San Diego now, I noticed Max Prep that there are some girls playing flag football and flag football teams popping up all over the place. And, I appreciate that as well. And just giving girls access and pure teamwork. And it's just another aspect of football that I love is I just feel like it's the consummate team sport. And as a part of my training with fantasy football, as a group, I wanted all of us ladies to create a war room and create a team together. So I'm going to keep score of that. But it was important for us to do something together and to make decisions together. And as far as, James mentioned something about inclusivity, and it could just be the energy and the way that I advertise. If you've been to my website, you notice that there are different types of women on that website. All of my advertising has a lot of different looking women and different types of women on there. And it literally drew different types of women of all ages and races. And it was a beautiful thing. And we got a lot of attention in the restaurant. It's a bunch of women there, talking about football and coming together and creating a team together. So I absolutely love the idea of the Women's National Football Conference. And I can just since I've been following it for the past 4 or 5 years, it's been developing and growing. So it's wonderful.
Cool. I have not actually seen a game. seen some of the advertisements, and I was just
Well,
curious.
Tiffany,
what your-
ran out of time. Sure, we don't like to have you back.
Of course.
Just comments right here.
I'm sorry.
James is
You-
having some
Demetrius?
issues. No, I'm good. I just want to thank you for being here. I think
Of
it's great
course.
information. I think, I think we all agree this is great. I didn't know it existed. I'm glad. Thank you, James, for having her on. So I
Thank
learned about it
you.
because this is fantastic stuff. So
Thank
if
you.
you can get
Thank
that
you so
whole
much.
pick up flag in Dallas thing settled for me, you got my full support. You got my full support in anything you
So,
need. Keep
there's
it up.
there's no playoff game that disturbs me more than the NFC Championship with Green Bay.
Yeah,
It was a catch. It was a catch.
of course it is.
Neil O'Donnell should be on your wall of honor down there in
That's true.
Dallas.
That's true. We could go all night, James.
Yeah.
No, well, I appreciate you. I know we all appreciate you being here, and it's really good
Thank
stuff.
you. Thank you so much.
We definitely
Thanks
intend
for
to have
having
Tiffany back. Do you have some final thoughts for us guys here?
Do we, or does Tiffany have final thoughts for us?
Does Tiffany have final thoughts for us?
Yeah, just anybody who wants to reach me, my website is www.thefootballgoddess.com. You can reach me and connect with me online via my contact form or on social media.
Awesome. And she's
Yeah.
humble, guys. Football goddess. Awesome. I love it. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
Take care, Tiffany.
All right, who's going to be the
All
host
right,
tonight?
James.
Who's going to be the host tonight? Because Mr. King is having some issues.
Well, James asked me to run the agenda because he had said he had
Kicked off.
connectivity issues.
There we go.
So James, are you on?
I think we got him now.
It's like he's fading in and out.
Yep, he's popping in and out.
Okay, so maybe
Just jump right in. We got
let's drive
Bill.
on.
We're
Okay,
fine.
so
We barely need.
the
We got Bill.
the first thing was James had the undisputed returns to the air with Skip Bayless, Michael Irvin, Keyshawn Johnson, and Richard Sherman.
Yeah.
Did anyone watch the premiere on Monday morning? What's the over and under for Richard Sherman to verbally slap Skip Bayless week 15 when the Cowboys miss or make the playoffs?
Nice.
So hey, welcome Jeffrey.
Hey, Jeffrey fan, good to see you.
I'm Dave.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
I'm just James has had some connectivity issues, so I'm just driving on with the agenda. So
Yeah.
welcome on board.
Everybody loves ACC football, so
Oh.
So Demetrius, do you want to tackle this first one?
Sure. I'll tackle the first one. This is never going to work, guys. This is never going to work. It's too many loud voices. A situation like that show, in my mind, much like this podcast, requires balance. There's a degree of balance. And if everybody's yelling, the yelling isn't substantially important. It's just a bunch of dudes yelling, right? So I think balance, somebody that they have to balance each other. And I think now you've put one guy in Skip with three screamers. And I'm not talking about their opinions, their intellect, or anything like that. I'm talking about styles and approaches. I don't know that you can have all of those guys on the same show. Now, if I don't understand this and they're just going to rotate, it might work. They're going to have all four of these dudes on the set at the same time, right? Somebody is going to have to break their historical tendency to be loud and dominant in conversations, or you're not going to have the balance it takes for this show to be sustainably entertaining. There will be clips on YouTube every now and then of some hot take theater that'll be funny as hell. Can it be? You can't watch that every day. I can't watch that every day. Now, I'm never going to watch it anyway, so it doesn't matter. I don't like Skip Bayless. So I will never watch a single episode. That's the answer to your did I watch Monday? Nope, I'm not watching next Monday or the following Monday. I'll listen to Bill tell me on Wednesday nights.
I see
whatever
Jeffrey.
happened. So,
Bill, did you have anything to add?
So for those who, when they were younger, or maybe still do, watch professional wrestling, there's something that happens, interstitials that take place called promos.
Yeah.
And what happens is during the promo section, the heel or face, depending on which wrestler it is, lets their opposition know that, one, they better skip town first, right? Before they get humiliated and destroyed in front of 18,000 people in the fill in the name of auditorium.
Fill in their blank city, right?
Fill it right. Toledo, whatever it is. Okay, and brother, what are you gonna do with these pythons are wrapped around you? Right. So that's cool, but it goes on for about 90 seconds, and then you have the match.
Right.
The problem is the interstitial has become the match.
Yep.
And wrestling promos are cool because they're just a little, they're a palate cleanser. But do you want an hour of cleansing your palate?
Right,
so I am wondering, one, whose idea was this? If it works, they're going to look a genius. I'll say that much. But I don't think it's going to work, and I don't think they're going to look like a genius. I really do. Okay, this is where I get to do the Demetrius Burgess thing of putting on. I am wearing black socks, actually.
Yes.
I need to grab some sandals now to go with these black socks and cargo shorts, and probably one of those old school Bluetooth earpieces, so that I can go outside with a rolling rock in one hand, and opine about how the world is going down the tubes. Right, in a handbasket. Right, of course, it's a handbasket. Of course. If you're going to wear black socks, you've got to have a handbasket for the world to go to hell in.
Trip to hell.
So, once again, I remember the real Skip Bayless, right? The actual Skip Bayless before he became this hollowed out husk that we see now. This sort of sun-dried, overamped heel, right? I mean, he basically is a pro wrestling heel now. And he was once a really respected, solid journalist. It's a bit sad, actually, to me at least. Now, I know he's making more money than he's ever seen before in his life. I guess that's, cushions the blow from having lost all, of your previous professional standing. A lot of these guys are going to have other commitments, so they won't all be there. To answer Demetrius's semi-question, because they have other commitments, they won't always be there. But there will be times when I guess they will have a full house, and that will either be like completely ear-splitting cacophony, or somehow they'll find a rhythm. The problem with
can anyone hear me yet?
Yeah, we hear
now.
you, James. What we're doing is we're just finishing up the segment on the undisputed returning to the air, and then we were about to introduce Jeffrey.
Oh, well, good evening, Jeff. How are you doing?
So
doing good.
Save it for your final thoughts, Bill. I think we're going to Jeffrey.
Okay, so I'll wrap it very quickly. There's a reason that you usually have at least one point guard, right, on the floor, at least, or someone who acts as one. I mean, it might be a 7-footer nowadays, but someone who thinks like a point guard. Yeah. Because you don't want everybody to have a gunner's mentality, right? Not everybody can be the, Vinny, the human microwave. Not everybody can be that, because if everybody just jacks up shots, your offense doesn't move. And that's what the problem they're going to have. Unless somebody decides to be a point guard, they're just going to have gunners. It's going to be nothing but, if I'm in the gym, I'm in range, woo, and that it sounds cool till you see somebody try to play that way. And that's my
should be fun.
All right. So James, are you back with us? Well, let me go ahead and introduce Jeffrey. Jeffrey, welcome to the Sports Crib. We've just been discussing the undisputed, as you heard us discussing, and then we had another segment talking about women in football. Yeah. And we had Tiffany Roderick on talking about her First and 10 Industries, where she's introducing the game of football to women, which was really interesting. So I guess maybe if you could introduce yourself and let us know what you're all about.
We know Jeffrey fan. Don't worry about that. We know he's been here before.
Well, maybe the people listening. People listening don't know Jeff.
I like when you talk ACC football. I think it's good stuff.
Go ahead,
welcome back, Jeffrey. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, yeah. If you don't know me, I'm definitely a follower of ACC football. I mean, I got personal interest in it. I went to school at Georgia Tech, and I went to school at Clemson. So I mean, I got two schools I really root for, and then you just follow the rest of the conference. Um, I've been following it for quite a long time. I blog on ACC at allsportsdiscussion.com. You can find me at Twitter at Talking ACC Sports, and we've been putting out previews all week on the ACC, getting ready for the season. Guys, everyone, we made it. Starting tomorrow. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Can I jump right at you then? And I think that you've got a
ACC,
handful of teams that are going to change everything, like Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and if you want to count Notre Dame, which I really don't. I mean, because they're not in football, right? What do you think your teams are going to do? Because that changes everything. If they go south, then it's a wrap, right? Cancel Christmas. SEC owns the world. If somehow my people could convince them to somehow join the Big Ten, now you got two real monsters, and I think it gets interesting. Or do they start recruiting and building up their? So in general, what do you think from a format? What happens with the big ACC teams?
I mean, I've kind of looked at it like this is going to 5 years. I said this last year. Nothing has changed my opinion that the ACC is going to be together at least through the late 2020s. I don't see teams moving right now, no matter what they think might might happen. I mean, you have this grant of right, and if it was easily broken, it would have already happened.
That's true.
That doesn't mean it won't get challenged. And I kind of feel like at some point it's going to get challenged, but I don't foresee teams moving in the near future. I'm looking towards it when you know you could hear something when the Big Ten and SEC have their deals start to come to an end, which would be around that 2030, 2031 time frame, which means they'd probably start looking at who could join somewhere towards the end of the decade, and that's when I think there is a possibility of something happen. But the strange thing that I've seen here in the last several months is Florida State's been the loudest. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
Their displeasure with the media rights deal, but there's a very real scenario in this realignment where they're really like fifth choice out of the ACC,
Yeah.
and that's because Notre Dame is number one. There's no question that Notre Dame is the brand that the SEC and Big Ten covet the most. There's no question about that. And if the ACC completely breaks apart, they're going to need a place to park their Olympic sports and football, because at some point they're going to join a conference.
Right.
So you look at them as number one, and then you look at the state of North Carolina and the state of Virginia. The schools there, because of where they're located, it can fit either with the SEC or the Big Ten.
Yep.
So you got four schools there, and I know it's tough for Florida State fans, and I'm a Clemson fan myself. It's tough to hear this, but you two might not be the first two choices.
Yeah.
I mean, you could very well be, looking at number 4, 5, or 6, and that's just the way it is. It just depends on what the Big Ten and SEC are looking for. Are they looking for football brands? Or are they looking for markets?
Yep.
And we've seen over the last 15 years, the brands haven't always been first.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason why Rutgers, Maryland, Missouri found homes before the other brands, because you don't know exactly what the schools doing the poaching are looking for. It could be, they want the brand, or it could be, hey, I want to get in a market that we're not currently in. And right now, you've got well-populated states with football. not necessarily maybe the greatest football. No one's talking about Virginia football, but that's a great Olympic sports school, and in the state, neither one of them are in.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it really depends on what the Big Ten and SEC are looking for, and I don't think they're apt to invite anyone here in the next few years. There's been so much going on, so I think we're really looking 4 or 5 years down the road for the next move. And if the ACC themselves doesn't poach Stanford, Cal, and SMU, which is right here on the borderline with, they need one more vote to make it happen. And so I mean we're not even close to being done, but I think the resolution of that will kind of put a slowdown on this for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
So Jeff, what do you think is more likely? Is the ACC going to end in 4 or 5 years, or do you think that they'll succeed in attracting some other teams to keep the conference going?
It's kind of a weird situation right now, because the teams that may not end up in one of the Power 2 conferences, they want expansion, because it's down to like a sheer number of quantity of teams. You have that Big 12 strategy where you just accumulate teams, and if someone leaves, you still have a viable conference.
Yeah.
And the SEC, Big Ten, you don't know how big they want to get. Do they want to stop? I mean, the Big Ten's already at 18 teams. How much bigger do they want to get? They want to stop at 20? Are they trying to get to 24?
24.
I mean, it all
24.
could be on the table. So my belief is that the ACC should expand, and you would have a viable conference that if teams leave, you can pick up. There's plenty of East Coast teams that can still formulate a decent conference. I mean, it wouldn't be what it was or anything close to what the Big Ten and SEC have, obviously, but it's kind of hard to say, because you're still waiting on the resolution from the Stanford, Cal, and SMU deal. Until that's resolved, it's kind of hard to say what it could look like. I think they should expand. Hey, geographically, I get it. It doesn't make sense.
Who cares?
But nobody cares about geography or student athletes anymore. And they stopped caring about that about 15 or 20 years ago. Yeah, maybe 20 years ago there was some thought. Nobody cares about that. If they can add some revenue to the ACC, I think they should do it. But they're waiting on one vote. They're waiting on one vote to flip for it to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right, but the one counter that I would have, like, for example, the Big Ten getting the West Coast schools over there, usually football and maybe a couple of basketball programs are the only sports that are profitable. And so all of your smaller sports, now all of a sudden their travel budgets are going to skyrocket. And so then there may have to be sharing from the football team with the other sports to keep them going, because now all of a sudden, like if the ACC expanded and they got some of the orphans from what was the Pac-12, or I think it was the Pac-12. I forget what they call them now. But now all of a sudden, you're having the impact on all of the smaller sports having to travel a lot greater distances in order to compete. And so I think that's the one argument. I think that you're right that it's kind of passe, these geographical conferences, but that's one thing that it was the.
But I think you mitigate those with what Jeffrey was saying about, or in my mind, I won't speak for Jeffrey, it's about markets. I think when the ACC looks at SMU, do we care about SMU? Or wait, it's in Dallas. That's saying to your TV partners, the Big Ten wants UCLA and USC for one reason: the market. Their TV deal goes up exponentially with those markets. Those just happen to be the two schools in that market, right? So when you do that, and what you said they're gonna, the football and basketball programs will subsidize.
They would have to share.
they're not sharing. They're subsidizing non-revenue sports, and they know that, right? Now, what they have to do with the geography is get smarter. The Big Ten's going to probably have to talk to, I don't know, Oregon or somebody else out there, because then you can have, when you get to 24, you can have 4 6-team divisions. They can play their division teams. You can mitigate that travel, and the exponential growth of the TV contract will cover all that. It will cover all that. And that's why this is a TV market game. They say TV partners. Soon we're just going to be honest and say TV bosses. Because that's
pretty
what's
much
driving all of this, right? It's TV revenue.
and that's one reason. That's another reason why I think that there's a little bit of a pause on this. Is I think there's definitely a potential, down the road for the SEC and Big Ten to expand, but right at the moment, the media networks, Fox and ESPN, they're tapped out.
Right.
You're not adding anyone that's going to raise what they're making.
Right.
Now, eventually, it'll start going back up, but like right at the moment, you got Oregon and Washington at partial shares. You got the Big 12 added 4 teams from the Pac-12. The 2 Arizona schools, Utah and Colorado, did not add to their contract.
Nope.
You've got Stanford and Cal potentially taking, reduced shares to get into the ACC, and SMU basically buying their way in potentially for 7 years. So the media, say as much as Florida State wants to leave, I don't think ESPN's going to say, all right, we're going to let you go to the SEC. We're going to pay you a full share and pay the SEC more when they wouldn't even add a 9th conference game because they didn't want to pay any more. I think the media networks at the moment here in the next 2 or 3 years, I think they're pretty tapped out.
Yeah.
So I think that's another reason why there's going to be a pause. It's probably not going to stop in the long run, but that's why I don't see much more movement for 3 or 4 more years.
Yeah, and the school's already in. They don't want to cut the pie anymore.
Exactly.
That's what Jeffrey's talking about. They're just slicing the pie up to smaller pieces now, and you got teams already in going, wait a minute, why don't we just, and he's right, though, when we get closer to new TV deals, then there'll be teams, and it was a great way to say it. SMU bought their way in. They're thinking long term. Yep. Eventually, there's going to be a new deal, and we're going to recoup all this. And they're probably right, quite frankly, but that's where it is now. But he's right. They're tapped out, and the TV deals drive this. And right now, the TV partners, TV bosses are saying, whoa, slow down.
They're like, pump the brakes on this a little bit. Because, I mean, they don't want to be negotiating these deals every 2 or 3 years. I mean, they'd at least like to get through the duration of the contracts before doing them over again. So I think they've made it pretty clear. I mean, if you're Florida State, say this really did happen, say they could find a way through the grant of rights, which I really don't think is, possible with that many years on it. But just say for argument that it did happen, if they got an invite from the SEC, those schools are making whatever, $80 million. Florida State's going to be, making half of that. Yep. So you're making a move. You're making half as much of what those teams make. Plus, you're probably still paying out the grant of rights, exit fees. There's so much litigation they're going to be dealing with. It's just not. I mean, if I was running the school, I might be doing my due diligence and seeing, what I do to prepare. But I'm not looking to fight the whole thing right now.
Right. You can't do it right now, but there's going to come a day where you cross that Rubicon and say, okay, now it's worth it. But we might be like you said, 2 or 3 years away from that.
Yeah, and James is still. I think he can hear us.
Oh, okay.
So, I think this is in regards to what you mentioned, Demetrius, the 24 team conference.
Yep.
He was wondering what would the schedule look like with the 24 team conference. What would that look like?
Well, my guess is simple. You're going to have either 2 really large conferences, 12 teams in each division. Sorry, and you just play everybody on your side. You have a conference championship game with the 2 champs. Right? You might mix it up because you got to respect some rivalries. Like if the Big Ten did it, it's easy. You got to keep Michigan and Ohio State on the same side. You got to respect some of those. You're going to keep USC, UCLA on the same side. Right now, the Big Ten doesn't have a huge problem with it. They could cut that thing somewhere around Wisconsin, right, and break it up, depending on who else they bring. Or They could go straight NFL, 4-6 teams, and you play, a round robin. You got to play everybody on your side. That's the easiest part. The money is the hard part. What Jeffrey's talking about, these grantor rights and exit fees, that's the stuff that's hard. What he's talking about is one 90-minute meeting with an algorithm. That's it. If the money's right, yeah, I'll take my team from Piscataway, New Jersey to LA. If the money's right, fine. We'll and UCLA will come to Piscataway and get that easy dub. They don't care. That's the easiest part is the scheduling. That's a software program.
Yeah, well, and the hardest part, and as was mentioned, no one cares. But if you are a gymnast, tennis player, or wrestler, and you play for Rutgers in Piscataway, New Jersey, and you have a Thursday night tournament in Los Angeles because you're now on the same conference,
right?
And then you get done at 10 o'clock Pacific time, get on an airplane,
right? You got a poli-sci exam tomorrow morning.
Fly back onto the East Coast. I mean, David, you and I both participated in the occasional wrestling tournament. What did you feel like after that?
Right.
When you got on the bus to go back? I'm assuming a bus. I don't know if I didn't.
You're not taking a bus from LA to Piscataway.
Well, no, I mean, I'm saying, no, not for that. They would have planes. But I'm saying, both for college and obviously high school, but even for college, we didn't have airplane travel. Yeah. We didn't go to many tournaments that are far away because of, it was wrestling, and we had almost no budget. One year we lost our coach to a high school team. I'm not even joking. We lost our coach to a high school team. So that's what they pay, college coaches in the old CIAA when I was wrestling in college. So imagine that, David. You finished a wrestling tournament. Parts of your body don't feel the best, right? You grab your gear, you get on a plane, you fly 4.5, 5, 6 hours, depending on what's going on. Arrive at home 2:30 in the morning, probably, right? Yeah, it's great. And bring on the super conferences. I know no one cares about non-revenue producing sports and the athletes that participate in them. But as a person who did, once again, as David could surely share, you already feel like a second-class citizen when you're wrestling.
You are a second-class citizen. What are you talking about? Just accept your fate, bro. You are.
So, Don, did you have any questions about the ACC or for Jeff?
No, not really. I always get the feeling that ACC is kind of in that situation where probably teams like Clemson, Florida State, probably North Carolina State in North Carolina, I can see them end up in the SEC easily. Really? And then the other teams going somewhere else. So I don't know. I
think they're going to get aggressive, and they're going to start. Well, I don't know. And Jeff, I have a question because you said it, but I forgot that grant of rights thing. How long? That's 3 years. What are we talking there?
13 years left on it.
Yeah. Good Lord. Okay, see, I don't even know if them going to ACC or Big Ten is an option because as Jeffrey has mentioned a couple of times, he talked about legal battles. He's talking about court proceedings. That's too hard. I think they're going to get aggressive and they're going to start poaching. And just to say viable, I don't know if their goal is let's become as big as those two, but they've got really good universities there. He talked about North Carolina and Virginia, those two states. That's 4 schools, and you got Clemson, and you got Miami, and you got Florida State. You've got already 7, 8 viable schools. If you go, but see, I don't know. Do I want to get on a plane from Miami to Tucson? I don't. Was it Arizona State? Who is it? I'm sorry, somebody out.
Well, I mean. And of course, we talked about how the shift used to be from like prestige and name recognition and to markets. Watch for in the next few years UNLV to start popping on people's radar. Not because they're this amazing, actually they of course had a great basketball program at one point, but they have pretty darn good facilities. Yep. The Fertitas family has plowed $1 gazillion, and I'm only slightly exaggerating, into their facilities and program. They're in Las Vegas, which is, I think, the largest or second largest, second, either largest in terms of growth amongst major metropolitan areas in the United States.
Wow.
So everything you're looking for, if you're poaching, right, is there. And UNLV, unlike the aforementioned Notre Dame, isn't going to have their nose stuck in the air, right? They are this very attractive market. And you just about SMU. Like SMU has basically bought its way in. They're hungry. These are hungry programs. UNLV wants to show people what it can do. And if one of the bigger conferences comes sniffing around, they won't be all weird about it, like, San Diego State or whatever. I mean, they will say, yes, when do we sign? Where do we sign? So you're going to see, the poaching is going to continue. The beatings will continue until morale increases.
I guess to build on Bill's comment, my question, Jeff, is what's the tipping point? Like, let's say that they lose 3 or 4 programs. Right now the ACC has 14 teams, I think. So what is the tipping point where it no longer becomes viable?
Well, I think the what happened to the Pac-12 is the blueprint for when it's viable or not. Once it got below 8, then there was almost no turning back, and then the teams just started exiting. They got down to 10, and if they would have invited, I think, like a San Diego State or maybe SMU and got to 12, but once they lost those other 4, because it started coming right after another, Colorado, and then I don't remember which Arizona school was next, but at that point they were looking at 7, 8, and then it just started going, and then, well, I can't quite remember the order, but Washington, Oregon, then now you're down to 4, and that. But it's kind of a weird deal, and I don't know how this would work. Is that right now the business entity of the Pac-12 still exists?
Mm-hmm.
So I was listening to sports radio today when someone was saying that, say Cal and Stanford did go to the ACC, Oregon State and Washington State stand to get all of the NCAA basketball tournament money that has been earned over. And they said it was like $70 million or something.
Fine.
So
we'll just alternate for 12 weeks. I'll come to your place. You come to my place.
Exactly.
We'll be a Pac-2 and we'll come back and forth. I know we only have you for about 5-6 more minutes. One more question.
Yeah.
As an ACC guy, would you, as they work this out, if they work this out, is it possible? Let's just say for if they lose Clemson and Florida State, how do you do it after that? Is that kind of what you just answered? Once the first 2 goes, then people start looking for a chair in the game of musical chairs, and before you know it, it's over. But right now, I think what you said is it just would be hard for the grant of rights things. That's hard for them to leave, is what that is. They have to pay fees and stuff for them to actually leave.
Is it 30 million? How much is it? I know it's a significant amount, Jeffrey.
The exit fee itself. There's 2 things: the grant of rights and the exit fee. The exit fee is $120 million.
So we just wasted Jeffrey's time talking about this, didn't we?
And then the grant of rights is like your media rights that there seems to be like people go back and forth, but this, Florida State doesn't own their rights.
Nope.
And what some have said is that they granted them to the ACC, who sold them to ESPN. So if you say that their media rights deal for each year is like $30 million, so it's like 30 million times 13, and like roughly the number is like the estimates have been like $300 to $500 million. They were trying to get out right now, and I mean, you look at what happened to Texas and Oklahoma. We've known for like 4 years, it seems like, that they were going to the SEC. They didn't leave the Big 12 until they had 1 year left.
Yep.
And I mean, Texas has more money than anybody. So I mean, they're going to have to come up with an astonishing amount of cash, even if it's negotiated down, plus deal with the part with the reduced shares right now. So there are a lot of reasons. I just don't see anyone moving it in the next 2, 3, 4 years into the decade. Definitely is something to think about, but right now, I mean, as a Clemson alum, if they go and tried to challenge this, I would be like screaming, like, what are you freaking doing? And try to take this to court and all the litigation you're going to deal with when you still have a path to the playoffs in the ACC. Money aside, you still go to the playoffs if you're the best team in the ACC without any doubt.
Yeah. So it was a fun conversation, but we didn't really need to have it, right? So in your last 5 minutes, who's going to win the conference?
I think I really like Florida State. I mean, I think with due respect to Drake May, who I think is a fantastic quarterback, I think Jordan Travis elevates his team the most, and he's got those intangibles, out there, and I think you have the best player at the most important position on an already pretty talented team. I mean, they have Jordan Travis at quarterback, and they got Jared Verse on defense, who might be the best defensive player in the ACC.
Wow. Yeah.
Coming in with a ton of momentum last year, and Clemson is extremely talented, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But I mean, they have a quarterback who's only played a couple games, even as talented as Cade Klubnik is. They're trying to put in a new offense with Garrett Riley. I just don't think they're as settled as Florida State is going into the season. And I think Clemson's going to beat Florida State in Death Valley, but I feel like when they play in Charlotte for the ACC title, that's where Florida State gets it back. Now, whether Florida State is a playoff team or not, I think we're going to find out Sunday night when they play LSU, another team that's capable, 2 Heisman contending quarterbacks in that one. That'll be a great game.
That's one of the questions that we have now that you bring it up.
Yep.
LSU is playing Florida State. Who do you see winning that game?
And I know that LSU lost their defensive tackle with the NCAA stuff, but I mean, between Daniels and Jordan Travis, I mean, I feel like this is still a game that Florida State can win playing in Orlando. They got the confidence of beating LSU last year. I think both teams are a lot better than they were when they faced each other last year. But I mean, Florida State is going to remember they beat LSU in Louisiana. I think the game was in New Orleans, and so I'm giving a slight lean to the Noles in this one.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I tell you, whenever I think of the ACC, I still think of. I live in Maryland.
Yeah.
I still think of basketball. I can't help it.
Despite the fact you got to watch
Drysdale,
Randy White at Maryland destroy everything in sight.
But in any case, I know that you got to head out. But did you have any final thoughts for us, or anything that you wanted to share that you haven't been able to cover yet?
No, I mean, just tomorrow night we're back to football. Whatever happens with realignment, we know who's going to be playing this year. I think you've got probably 8 or 9 teams that can reach the playoffs. The only one I feel like truly confident across the country is Georgia, because they have a cakewalk schedule through the entire season until they get to the SEC. Maybe Tennessee can give them a challenge at the end of the year, but they're going to be basically prepping for the SEC championship game for 3 months. But I mean, outside of that, I think it's really wide open. I think the Pac-12 could be the deepest league in the country. I mean, I think the SEC is the most top heavy, but it's a shame of what's happening to the Pac-12 because they're going to have a fantastic season. They got great quarterbacks in the Pac-12 this year. Utah and Florida playing on Thursday night is, we're going to find out if Utah, if they can't beat a kind of a, nondescript Florida team at home, that I'm going to be really surprised. But I think the Pac-12 is going to be great. In the Big Ten, you got Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State should be really, really good. So I mean, I think this is going to be one of the more wide open playoff fields outside of Georgia that we've seen in a while. I don't think you can pencil in the 4 teams at this point at all, because I think a lot of teams got a shot to get in there. Georgia's the only one I would say, just go ahead and book their spot in there right now. So yeah, I think it's going to be a great fun season. I'm looking forward to it.
Totally agree. Remind everybody where to find your content, by the way.
Yeah, you can find me at Talking ACC Sports. I'll definitely be tweeting, starting out this week. I'm actually Friday. I'm going to go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium to catch Georgia Tech. I haven't seen them play a game in Atlanta in a while, so I'm looking forward to that. And I've never been to I've been to the Georgia Dome, but not to the Mercedes-Benz. So myself, I'm looking forward to that. I think that's going to be a, competitive game with Louisville. But Talking ACC Sports on Twitter, on X, whatever they call it now, and then All Sports Discussion is where we're doing the blog work.
All right, good stuff, Jeff.
Man,
Good to see
thank
you
you
again,
very
Jeff.
much, Jeff.
Hey,
And
thanks for
speaking of
having me.
poaching, I'll be poaching you again, Jeff, for my show.
That'll work,
Jeff's
Bill.
great.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys,
Jeff.
for having me.
Good night.
Right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh man.
All right. So that was pretty interesting. I used to love the ACC basketball rivalries. They were some great ones. But hey, I didn't get a chance to share Sue's thoughts on the agenda, so I'll sneak those in right now. And I don't fact check them. I don't. She just says what she's going to say.
You're just gonna wing it? No proofread, nothing. You're just gonna wing it.
I just read what she provides me.
That's what King gets.
I've learned. We've been married a long time, and I like to keep it that.
All right.
So Sue says, my only quirky thoughts of the week is parent nightmare. Jaguar coach Doug Peterson had to cut his own son, Josh Peterson. I'm thinking Mama Peterson wasn't happy. And then she continues, unbelievable. How did those guys get onto the field and attack Acuna the other night?
Oh, right.
And on another baseball note, will Ohtani ever recover fully from the UCL tear? So I guess he hurt his elbow pitching the other night.
Sure did. Yep.
And then she says, interesting, ESPN is teaming up with Cinemark to show top-level college football games in the theater.
Yep.
Will that take off? I guess it could be a fun idea if you wanted to have a reunion with your college friends to watch a game and not burden anyone with having it in their house, and everyone could get their own snacks. She has a little smiley face there. Most theaters have beer now, lots of laughs. So that was Sue's review of our agenda tonight.
Great stuff by Sue. Great stuff.
So I guess we can continue on with the NCAAF, and then Jeff had talked about LSU and FSU. How about the rest of you guys? What do you see happening in that matchup? So maybe start with Don.
Okay, so in this game, I like Florida State. I know that probably at the end of the year, LSU might be a little bit stronger, but I think first game, it is in Tallahassee, correct?
Nope, it's in Orlando, actually.
It's in Orlando, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hurricane, I guess. Anyway.
Well, yeah, maybe. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Just a little storm, a little rain. But
this is the guy in Texas.
yeah. So yeah. But it's still a home crowd for Florida State, and so I think that could be the difference. So I'll go with Florida State, probably by 7, by touchdown.
Well, okay, Bill.
I'm gonna, sort of ditto me there for the winner. I think it'll be even closer though. I think it's about a 4-point game. I think 27-31. I think that there's going to be a late turnover that's as LSU was mounting a comeback, but that maybe former Great Dane Jared Verse, right? See, I was watching Jared Verse back before he transferred, back at Albany, where he was an unstoppable killing machine in the Northeastern Conference at Albany. But I think he might make maybe a strip sack or something that saves, salts away the victory for.
You just predict a strip sack to salt
away
just
the victory.
salt away the victory. All right, that's bold. I love it when Bill does that. Gives you the score, tells you how the last possession is going to go. Strip sack. That's
all right. Well, matchup, Demetrius. Go for it.
I agree. It's easy. They covered all the good stuff. I think the game went in overtime last year. LSU is missing Emery, the running back. I would love to dig into that. I think it's academics, but I don't want to speculate. And they're missing a receiver, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to try and pronounce his name. So they're missing a couple of guys. So I like Florida State. Close game. I'm not going to go strip sack. I'm going to go muff snap, fumble, recovered by a Florida State linebacker, returned 18 yards to the 5-yard line, setting up game-winning field goal.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Get
So
your prop
everybody
bet
agrees it's going to be a barn burner.
I think close game. Oh, I got to go.
Very
I'm
close.
going to go, 27-26, something close. I think it was 24-23 last year. I think the guys covered it. It's going to be a close game. I think Florida State's a little better.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to whether it'll be impacted by the storm. I would tend to. I'm going to go with the home team here, Florida State. I see it as like a race.
Yeah.
And who has the ball last might win the game.
Yeah.
That might be the difference. Whoever has that last possession.
Especially if you get it on a strip sack. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And we mentioned impact transfers. Watch out for former Gamecock Jaheim Bell, sort of that supersized Debo Samuel, running wide end, I guess, whatever you want to call it, or tight end
plays like a wide
back. I don't know what I don't know what you want to call it.
Isn't it H-back? Wouldn't they used to call those guys H-backs or no?
I mean, he's some of everything. He lines in the backfield.
Like
he's brutal as a blocker, but he sort of reminds me of like if Frank Wycheck and Shannon Sharp had a baby.
Wow.
And
awesome.
Yeah, he can do a little bit of everything, but I know that one of those beaten to the death terms is matchup nightmare, but who do you put on a guy like Jaheim Bell?
Yeah.
Linebackers he runs away from, and God help any kind of defensive back that tries to bring down Jaheim Bell with a full of steam.
Yeah, good luck.
Oh.
All right. Well, Bill, I guess the other game that James asked about was, will Colorado win its opener against TCU?
No.
Tell us what's going to happen.
No, but it will be a close, compelling game. Here's the thing about Colorado, and I sort of joke about, but about him having to wear name tags, but the depth chart, right? The 2 deep, right? So that's, two deep on both sides of the ball, 44 players. 39 of them are different this year from last year. Of the 44 on the 2 deep, 39 of them weren't there. So they are truly a different team. And while the talent level is much higher, there's just sort of things that coalescing, congealing. You don't really have preseason. You have, contact practices a little bit and things like that, but there's nothing approximates live games. I mean, we all know that. So I think they're going to be a little out of sorts a little bit at first. And TCU has lost a lot, but they're still a good team. I just don't think that Colorado's quite ready. Now, ask me again in a year, and I might have a different answer for you. But I don't think this year they're ready to knock off TCU.
Demetrius.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be close. I think there are a lot of people caught up in the Coach Prime hype. Bill covered it all, though. I think they were 1-11 last year, or something really bad.
They were 1-11 last year, and lucky to get the one they got.
Exactly. Now, he brought in a lot of talent, but he used a great word, congeal, right? There is something that has to happen when a team is built. This is true in organizations or anywhere else, but certainly in sports. TCU went to the championship game, if I'm not mistaken, and they did lose some players. That gap was massive. The talent gap of the teams that ended last season was massive. Is Coach Prime cute with the hat? And unless 1994 Dion is playing, no. They're 20-point underdog for a reason. I don't think this game is going to be close. The Coach Prime thing is going to be cute until about midway through the first quarter when it's 17-3. And
you don't think Dion's going to try to sneak out on the field during the game?
Well, he can't anymore. All due respect, he can't do that anymore. I wish he could. That's not even nothing to joke about. But that's not happening.
No.
That's not happening. So the talent gap he can't close it in 1 year. None of that is to badmouth him or say, like Bill said, they're going to be competitive next year and look out for him in 2 years. because
Yep.
I think he will turn the program on because he'll recruit his ass off.
Oh
You
my God.
can't ask him to beat TCU in his first game, a team that went to the national champ. That's absurd. So, but if he does it, I'll come on this podcast and apologize next week. But no, sir, I do not see it. I do not see
All
it.
right.
If
Don.
he does it, I'll come on the podcast with a Jerry curl and a dookie rope.
And
But
tell Detroit to
We
put me
are
on later.
recording this, so we have this on record.
I know you do.
It
I
is.
feel pretty safe.
He does
but
record it. And
but-
James will throw it back at him if he has to. James
oh
has
my
no
God,
problem.
he sure will.
James has
But
no problem with that.
he has no problem with anything. But as I think was just pointed out, this is.
Did
going
I
to be
just hear something about a Jerry curl and a do?
Oh, that's what brought him back. Is that what it took?
He came
Wait,
for the Dookie rope.
Wait,
Yes, sir. Yep.
But now we know what works to get James back.
Right.
But what I will say is they will play hard. That you will see some flashes because they do have a handful of truly special players. You'll see Shadur Sanders make some plays. You'll see obviously Travis Hunter's maybe one of the top 20, 25 players in the nation. They've got some dudes, but they don't have enough of them in certain places. The trenches are still kind of a feeling around, figuring it out. Hey, who are you again? And the thing about offensive line is it's talent. It's nice to have talent, but what makes an offensive line great? When you look at a guy a certain way and he knows, oh, okay, I'm going to slide this way 4 more inches.
Exactly.
They don't have any of that.
Right.
They don't have any of that stuff yet that great offensive lines have because they don't know each other.
Yep. That's it.
All right. Well, they are 20-point underdogs, Colorado.
Yeah,
So
Vegas is pretty good at what they do. I'll say it that way.
So James, we were covering this, and then the one point I didn't cover was with Don. What was on he hasn't given his prediction on that, and then he was going to talk about Texas Tech.
Yeah,
in Benton, Texas.
I've been listening. Go ahead, Don.
We're gonna have Robot James King all night.
What's your thoughts on TCU?
The future is bright for Colorado, but it won't be against TCU. TCU probably 14-point.
Yeah.
Good call.
I mean,
Sounds about right.
basically, Dion has an army of mercenaries.
Right. But there's a lot of work before that's a team. An army of mercenaries will lose to a team. You hear me?
Exactly.
They'll lose to a team every time, in my opinion.
All right, and then so Don, the question that James had for you was the Big 12 commissioner told Texas Tech, quote, "You better take care of business against Texas on November 24th," unquote. So what's the response to that, Don?
Yeah, so that went over like a lead balloon here in Texas. There's always some concern that the refs are going to put the screw jobs to Texas and Oklahoma. So the Big 12 officiating is notoriously bad, and this commissioner, he's kind of shady guy. I don't know if you investigated his history. He's got some questionable stuff. There's an article that said his wife had some mob ties to in New Jersey, so they might be some
This
Sopranos.
is so compelling. This is so compelling. I'm watching some Big 12 football this year now.
Yeah, I can't believe he would actually come out and say that. So I'm sure. I mean, I was on a Texas message board. They said we're just have to mud stomp the shit out of teams this year to keep it. It's not even in question.
That's it.
Do not put yourself in position to the refs to fuck you.
Yeah, there's a saying that a friend of mine shared with me recently. I think it comes from Chris Rock. And I think that what he did can be best classified as the soundtrack to an ass whooping. And I think it's going to end poorly for Texas Tech. Thanks, Brett Yormack. Congratulations, bro. Because I think Texas is going to do exactly what Don said. They're going to make a point. They're going to make a point week after week after week. Yeah. See ya. You're going to miss me when I'm gone.
The last time Texas Tech came to Austin, the Horns put 70 points on them.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised to see it again.
And Texas is much better this year than we were 2 years ago.
Yep.
So let that commissioner suck on that.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Appreciate it, bro.
Dave, you seem to be able to keep at least a connection better than me and Don. So you can kind of go ahead as for whenever I get to freeze here. But Don,
like right now.
There we go.
Like right now.
Well done.
I guess what we can do is before we go to the NFL topics, are there any other NCAA football topics that you guys want to cover before we move to the NFL?
I'll just hit on some of the things that I'm writing about when I write my stuff from week 0. There were 2 young wide receivers, one who's just 19 years old, and one who I think they're both 19. One is recently turned 19, that was 19 going on 20, who were just spectacularly beautiful to watch. And if you don't already know this name, you're going to know this name. This is a name that you will be hearing for years to come. And if you just saw this kid, you won't forget it. USC has always done a good job of finding spectacular, skill position talent. Sometimes they struggle in the trenches. But Zachariah Branch, he was on Feldman's freak list. He's been timed at 10.33 in the 100 meters before. But he's not just fast, though he is very, very fast. He is one of those guys that has just a tremendous way of feeling everything that's going on around him. He accelerates and decelerates exactly when and how he needs to. He can sort of see and, that sort of almost maybe 270-degree vision that those great, broken field runners have. He was expected to not really do much as a wide receiver, at least at first. He had 4 catches, 58 yards, including a beautiful 39-yarder. But, of course, he made his biggest impact in special teams. But as the year goes along, you're going to see more and more of him in it. But he had 232 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns against a game and very motivated San Jose State team. And then if you like explosive young players, Jaden McGowan of Vanderbilt is another guy who's got a little bit of that Dante Hall action to him, right? Another guy who's just liquid lightning. 97-yard kickoff return versus Hawaii, 72 receiving yards on top of that on 6 receptions, and threw in 2 rushes for 11 yards. He's, not the biggest cat, like 5'7" and 5'8", about 182 pounds, but man, does that guy know how to change direction at high speed, and he's got really nice tight end. So if you're a person that enjoys watching players that make fast people look slow, you'll like watching those 2.
All right, nice. I wrote Zachariah Branch down. I wrote that name down, so I'm hoping to hear more about him in the future.
Oh, you will.
All right. So, anything else on college football? We'll go on to NFL. Ready?
Let's hit the league. Yeah.
All right. So, a lot going on. Even though week 1 is still 10 days, 11 days away. But the first question.
It's 9 days. Lions, Chiefs, 9 days. Nice try.
All right, there you go.
We should watch that together someplace.
I guess technically it's only 8, so it's a week from tomorrow, Thursday night.
Yeah. Yep. We should watch that game together someplace, sir.
I will call you.
That'd be nice. Though not necessarily for the same reasons. Which of these quarterbacks is under the most pressure to perform this season? So we'll go around the horn Demetrius, we'll start with you. The 4 quarterbacks that James listed was Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. I get tongue-tied on that, so I'm going to say Aaron, Lamar Jackson, or Justin Fields. So which of those 4 is under the most pressure to perform this season?
So I think it's easy. I'm going to leave most of this for Bill. I'm just going to hit him quick. It's he who shall not be named. I don't say that name. I will not say that name. It's him for a bunch of reasons that I'm going to touch on in my final thoughts. The Russ thing is simple. Russ will likely never be Seattle Russ again, but he can't be Denver Russ again. So Russ just has to play better than he played last year, and people will lay off him because I think any reasonable football fan understands the system he had in Seattle, the protections he had in Seattle, and I think the presence of Sean Payton is you're going to get a better Russ. Yeah. I don't understand who's putting expectations on Justin Fields. He played for the team with the worst record in the league. They had some talent upgrades. But what's the expectation? Are people expecting them to win the North? Because I could do a whole diatribe on who's winning the North. We all know who's winning the North. I don't know why there's any expectations on Justin Fields other than continue to progress as a pocket passer. And even then, I don't know that I want you to do that at the expense of the dynamic shit you can do with your legs. I don't know why anybody's putting any pressure on Justin Fields, quite frankly. Just continue to grow. And Lamar is on a really good team that's going to win a bunch of games. So unless your expectation is Super Bowl, and they might get there. They're good enough to get there. So I don't see a bunch of pressure on Lamar. I don't understand any pressure on Fields. I think Russ's expectations are low and he'll exceed them. And it's the jackass in New York that really has all the expectations.
All right. Well, Don, how about you? How do you view those 4? Which is under the most pressure? Russell Wilson, Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, or Justin Fields?
We did not lose Don.
I think the most pressure would be squarely on Russell Wilson. Just my opinion. Rodgers has his Super Bowl ring. We kind of expect Lamar Jackson to have a good season until he gets hurt. Justin Fields, it's too early for him to have that kind of pressure just yet. But I think Russell Wilson, because he's been so close and he's getting, a little bit long in the tooth, not so much as Rodgers, but Rodgers has his ring. So I think the pressure is squarely on Russell Wilson this year.
Break the tie, Bill.
Well, I mean, Russell Carrington Wilson and Aaron Charles Rodgers have the same number of Super Bowl rings, and Russ's is more recent. So I'm going to go back to the guy who's been telling people not to poke the bear, which is so an interesting term because he brings up bears at various interesting times in his life.
Right.
And a former Cal Bear himself. Here's the interesting thing about a guy like him. Because his engine is driven by pettiness, he has been super petty this year. I don't know if you've been checking out Hard Knocks, but he's really leaning into this whole, just finding ways to get himself motivated kind of thing. Once again, did you see from guys like Michael Jeffrey Jordan and inventing slights, creating slights, getting to beefs with Jihad Ward of all people. Jihad Ward. Right. So, I mean, I'm an Illinois guy. I love Jihad Ward, but it's just a weird guy that's the guy you're beefing with. He's a of course, a complicated man. No one understands him, and apparently not even the women in his life, really. For what I've been given to understand. Shout out to Shailene Woodley. Shout out to Olivia Munn and
Danica
Patrick, right? And his current Blue. Is her name Blue?
I think her name is Blue. That's what we're calling her. Yeah,
Blue. So, I mean, he is a guy that goes sort of out of his way to not do the things that you would think someone would do, right? His decision making on the field is often, almost perfect, and then in the rest of his life, highly questionable. He's essentially divorced himself from all of his close family members. It's just an interesting dude, very interesting dude. The choices he's made, the things he's done, just are very different. but he's more football focused than he's been in a while. And so no matter what we think about him as a person, I think he's good. I know I predicted the Revenge Redemption Tour previously, but I think I might have been a year early on the Revenge Redemption Tour. I think he is going to, whether we like it or not, I think he's going to play at an MVP level much of this year.
But he's under the most pressure. You agree, right?
Oh, I agree. Yeah, and he's amping the pressure up on himself. Like he wants it, right? I mean, whether it's smart or not, he wants all the smoke. He wants all of it because petty people want all the smoke. Because what's better than petty? Smoked petty. I mean, he's into that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I had a different view. I'll do mine in reverse order. I actually had ayahuasca last, the least pressure. He's had a full career, and whether he does well with the Jets or not, whether he's applying the same pressure on himself, if it falls flat, he has an entire career behind him that he'll probably be in the Hall of Fame. So I don't see him as having an undue amount of pressure unless the fountain of youth hits and all of a sudden he's there. I just think we don't have to worry about him. And then next I had Justin Fields. I think that there's more pressure on Justin Fields and Rodgers simply because he's just at the very beginning and he wants to take off. But he's, what is he, 2 seasons he's played?
Well, he played very little as a rookie.
Right.
Mostly that was the Andy Dalton year. And if you want to get a Bears fan truly in their feelings, ask them about how they felt about watching Andy Dalton play as trade for their team.
Right.
And so he got a little bit of work. So he's had less than double-digit starts, I think.
Yeah. So he's, whatever happens this year, he has time is on his side. And so I don't think he has as much pressure as the last 2. So that was between Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson. I put Russell Wilson at number 2. He needs to redeem himself. I mean, he took a lot of heat last year. There was a question about, how he was fitting in with the team in his own private office and all this kind of stuff. But he does need to redeem himself. So he's under a lot of pressure. But Denver does not have that good of a team.
I agree.
And so I think there that kind of relieves a bit of the pressure if he doesn't perform this season. So that left Lamar Jackson. And I think the thing is Lamar Jackson has the team behind him.
Okay.
But like last year, he couldn't finish the season.
Yeah.
And so now the question is can he get through the full season? Can he take him into the playoffs?
Yeah.
And, with his injury history, now you're starting to tick-tock on his career. How long more is he going to last?
Yeah. So your view of that question was that Lamar's on the best team, the team that should do the most, so he should have the highest expectation.
Right.
Okay. I can't disagree with that.
That's the way I viewed it.
I think I saw the question differently. My feeling is when he who shall not be named fails in New York, it will taint his legacy. He will be OJ in a 49er uniform. He will be Willie Mays in a Mets uniform. That's what he's going to be. And I love it. Or at least that's what I'm hoping. So I might have just put wishful thinking. I think your list might be more accurate. And I'm just putting what I hope for. I hope he's a miserable failure.
All right. Fair enough. So now we go to the Texans, which, man, I love the Texans this week. I really do.
You do? Okay.
But not for this reason.
All right.
So the Texans named C.J. Stroud as the starting quarterback for the season opener. The offensive coordinator, Bobby Slovic, cut his teeth with the 49ers rushing attack. And James asks, what's the over-under for CJ staying upright?
What a crude question, by the way, Mr. King. What a really crude question that is. This kid's just trying to make a living and feed his family. You out here asking for predictions for when he's going to get hurt. That's so James King. I don't, you can go, Don, you can go first. This is James King special. I don't know what to do with this.
Well, I think the Texans really have no choice but start Stroud. I mean, that's just, just do the elimination process of elimination. I mean,
Yep.
and he could have a breakout year. We just don't know. The thing about the Texans is they're one of those teams that even Nostradamus couldn't predict. The futility, but we'll see. I don't know if they get much worse than were last year, but you just never know.
All right, Bill.
Yeah, well, Coleridge Bernard Stroud Jr. is a player that I think we're going to have some revelation moments, but he's young. He's going to make some of those classic young quarterback mistakes, hold the ball when he shouldn't, throw some, what are you doing picks. But he's also going to make some beautiful throws. His pure natural accuracy, it's funny, we just talked about a guy who has amazing pure natural accuracy a little while ago who, we'll see if it transfers over from his previous, home in the sort of bucolic Wisconsin, lowlands to, the pressure-packed, New Jersey, to be exact, but New York by name market. A guy who has sort of a similar ability to just be preternaturally accurate is Mr. Stroud. I mean, he puts the ball when he sees what he thinks he sees and gets the ball out, he puts it right where you want it. He doesn't really understand that late safety rotation, some other things that you're going to see from NFL defenses that you just don't see that much in college. But the talent is undeniable. The team is still bad. Not as bad as last year, but I analyzed the roster, and yes, they're demonstrably better, but that probably still only means 2 or 3 more wins, which is kind of what they should want anyway. I mean, not what they should want, but I mean, they don't want to be picking in the teens. What's the point in, winning 8 games, right? And going 8-9. I mean, that doesn't really help you. I guess it bolsters morale a little bit, but winning a couple of more games and still being able to pick in the top, 7 or 8 picks is probably better for them long term. They have some building blocks here and there, but they still, just pure talent level, they're still a bottom 10 team.
All right. And Demetrius, you abstain or?
I will say this. Bill said one thing that was brilliant. They're still a really bad team. It's important to note that they're still a really bad team. I would say, Bill, help me out if I got it wrong, 1990 Troy Aikman. 89 Troy Aikman or 90 Troy Aikman?
Yeah, 89 Troy Aikman.
89
right?
Troy Aikman. That's where I'll leave it. Go back and look at the stats of 9. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be Hall of Famer Troy Aikman, who I'm a fan of. I like me some Troy Aikman. That man had a rough rookie year. That man had a very difficult rookie year. Why?
Yeah.
Because as Bill said, team still isn't good. Now, if they build like the Cowboys did and fleece a team like the Cowboys did the Vikings, right? But we're not doing that. Rookie quarterbacks on bad teams have rough years. None of this is rocket science, right? I think it's going to be pretty along the path it should be.
Yeah, I'll take it. This is not about CJ Stroud.
Oh, not at all.
And the Texans have had several injuries to their offensive line to the point, and this is why I'm a Texans fan this week, to the point that they traded the 6th round draft choice to the Steelers for Kendrick Green, who everybody knew probably was not going to make the 53-man roster.
Yep.
And the Texans, I think, were like number 2 on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so almost they were guaranteed if they had just waited till Tuesday.
Maybe that's why they're the Texans.
They would have picked them up for nothing.
Decisions like that.
But what it indicates to me is that they're getting desperate about that offensive line.
I agree.
And in fairness to Kendrick Green, I don't think he was misevaluated by the Steelers. They misevaluated him. They wanted him to come in as a starting center to replace Marquise Pouncey, and he barely played any center, although he's athletic enough where he was playing fullback during training camp. I think Mike Tomlin was was showcasing Kendrick for the other teams. He can play guard, but he has not. I mean, he's missed so many blocks. And for the Texans to be desperate enough to trade a draft pick, where if they'd been patient, they probably would have landed him for nothing, indicates to me that they got some problems with that offensive line. And that leads to, you might have a bad team, but you want to at least have an offensive line that's going to protect that young quarterback. And that's I'll just leave that right there. So, all right. So Colts, new head coach Shane Steichen, in his former job as the Eagles offensive coordinator, helped design the offense that led to Jalen Hurts' breakout season. So he wants our thoughts. And in addition, he says the Colts first round pick and newly named starting quarterback Anthony Richardson, they expect me to come in and go to the Super Bowl. And that he has that in quotes by Anthony Richardson. Confident, skeptical, or overwhelmed. So, what are your thoughts on Shane Steichen coming in as the Colts coach? And with Anthony Richardson's quote, they expect me to come in and go to the Super Bowl, unquote. What are your thoughts on what his mindset was when he said that? So, Demetrius, you want to start off with this one?
I think we need a fourth choice. Stupid, maybe. So, bro, you are a rookie. You got a new head coach, and one of the top 5 running backs in the league will not be around for a good portion of the season. Looks like you're not going to the Super Bowl. So I think you want him to be confident, but you also need some humility and some balanced thinking, a degree of logic, maybe some data. You kind of need all of that. So you can't be out here as the rookie quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts that don't have Jonathan Taylor, and you can't be out here talking about the Super Bowl. You just can't. You got to know better. So I don't know if he's overwhelmed. I don't really think he's skeptical and just saying it. I think he's confident, and you probably want that, but you can be confident and still be reasonable. I think.
Joe Willie Namath.
Right, but he was on a good team, and he knew that team was good, and then he went out and proved it. Now, does anybody on this panel think the Colts are winning the Super Bowl? Raise your hand if you think the Colts got a chance to win the Super Bowl.
Well, this leads to the question: what do you think Shane Steichen's impact on the Colts will be?
We won't know this year. Similar to Coach Prime, he is bringing in a system, and he's got forgot the guy in Carolina's name. He's got that guy's players. Frank Reich. He's got Frank Reich's players. Yeah. So I think you need at least a year to turn your roster around when you're bringing in a different system, or just your kind of guys. And I could do a soliloquy on the Lions and how they've done it. But I think that right now, is it Steichen or Steichen, Bill? Do you know?
Steichen.
It's Steichen?
Unless you want to go, he's probably going with like the traditional, maybe Hungarian or something.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever heard it said.
I would have to see how he pronounces it. But
yeah, I've never heard it out loud because I just didn't pay attention when he got hired. And in my mind, it's Steichen. And so when David, I was like, damn, am I wrong? Whatever that guy's name is, he has to put his stamp on the team, and you don't do that in one cycle.
Right.
My feeling is it takes at least 2 cycles, right? So you want your quarterback to be confident. He's got all the tools. Maybe he just feels really good in the playbook or whatever. I don't know that those 2 words should be coming out of his mouth right now. If they're in the building telling him we expect you to take us to the Super Bowl, well, this would be an interesting time in New Orleans. Shout out to my friend Mike, who I haven't seen in a while, Colts fan.
All right. So, Don, now I'm curious.
You want to say
Steichen? Steichen's impact on the Colts and reaction to Anthony Richardson's quote.
Well, as someone said earlier, Troy Aikman's rookie season was a disaster. And if I remember right, that was also Jimmy Johnson's rookie season as coach. So if you have a rookie quarterback and rookie coach on a team that's probably 8-8 at best, you're not going to the Super Bowls. Hell, you may not make the playoffs. probably
the
won't
fact
make
that
the
you
playoffs.
have a new coach probably means you were bad because you fired your old
Yeah.
coach. And the fact that you drafted a talented quarterback meant you're probably drafting top 5 or 7 because you were a bad team. So, yeah, I think you're right.
So what the Colts need to do is trade Herschel Walker and get some draft picks.
Yeah, that'd be a good move if we could all do it.
Yeah.
All right, Bill.
Which team were you fixing? You said
This is the Colts. Station's impact on the Colts and reaction to Richardson's quote.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, Shane Steichen wants his players to believe they can win the Super Bowl. Remember, I talked about what you say internally and what you say externally.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Cardinals are going to tell you externally they're playing to win the Super Bowl. They're not going to say we're planning to go 4-13. Like, no one says that publicly. So yes, they're going to say that they're planning to win the Super Bowl. What's your expectation? We're going to win the Super Bowl. Their realistic expectations is to perhaps win the South. Why? Because the South is imminently winnable.
Right.
So they've got a legitimate shot at that. They have a good defense if they stay healthy. They have a quarterback who is a solve for X, right? Only 393 pass attempts in his entire collegiate career. But I mean, we talked about his physical prowess. I mean, 6'4" and a quarter, 244 pounds, 40 and a half inch vertical, and 4.43 40, and could throw a ball through a car wash without getting it wet. I mean, all the physical stuff you could ever want in the world, but he just hasn't seen very much football. So when you decide we're not going to ease him into it, we're not going to let Gardner Minshew take the lumps. No, we're putting him out there immediately. You're going to have a couple of bad losses early on, just because he's going to make some big, giant mistakes a couple of times. But he's also going to like run for 77 yards on somebody. He is a special athlete. But yeah, they're not a Super Bowl team. But they can't say they're not. No team will tell you they're not a Super Bowl team publicly.
Yeah, I mean, talking about Richardson's quotes, I did not actually see him deliver those words. I'd like to see the context of it. I think that's real important.
There's always context, yeah.
And but just looking at the words, I take him as being confident because nobody's expecting the Colts to go anywhere.
Right.
But he's saying, "Hey, look, I'm prepared. I'm going to take them as far as the rest of these guys are going to go with me." It's the way I take it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that he's displaying, to me, my reaction is confidence. And man, wasn't he the guy at was it the senior day or the pro day whenever he was on his knees and hit the
combine? He was at the combine, wasn't
the
he?
combine and hit the roof from his knees. I mean,
he was at the combine.
Wow. Unbelievable. But with Station, I think the thing is he's coming from a very solid organization that up and down, the coaches, the general manager, the scouts, and everything, a very, very good organization.
Yeah.
And I think that he may be able to do some improvements, but I think that the Colts need to put some other pieces around him, not necessarily his coaching staff, because that's his. But I'm talking about, do they got the right scouting team? Is their general manager really making some good decisions? And I think organizationally, they need to put some elements around before they can really take off. But I think just the fact that you got a new guy trying to put it in a system, I think that we may see them being a little bit more competitive. But I'm just a little bit surprised that they're putting Richardson out there right away. I wouldn't do it. I don't. You have a veteran quarterback that you could show him the way for a couple games before you bring him in.
Yeah.
That's just my thought.
It's always an interesting dilemma. James King, he's back in the background. DJ, wow. Or does he have that thing on auto set?
I don't know.
I think. He's back
that might be his warning
He's
bell.
back there having fun with us. Yeah, he might be telling us to speed it up or something. I don't know.
So, Tampa Bay, here's the question. can Baker save his career at Tampa? So, Don, I'll start off with you. Can he start that off?
I don't think Don cares about Baker.
All right. How about you, Demetrius?
I'll make it easy. Somebody really smart, maybe Maya Angelou, somebody said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. We know who Baker Mayfield is. We know what Baker Mayfield is, right? We know what Baker. I didn't see anything. I haven't heard anything that suggests to me Baker Mayfield will continue to be Baker Mayfield, which means Tampa 8-9, 7-10. I don't even know if Baker will be starting by week 8. I get ready for the Kyle Trask era. I don't. Baker's Baker. I'm not even being critical because he's a talented young man. He's not going to make some paradigm shifting change in the way he approaches life and or football that's going to make him exponentially better than what we've seen since he joined the league. That's my thoughts on Baker.
All right. Anybody want to add anything to that?
Define save, because when you say save career, I think he could prove to people that he could be essentially a Gardner Minshew-esque bridge quarterback. I think he might demonstrate that. So a team that is in transition, let's say at some point next year, the Cardinals have come to that fork in the road, right?
Yes.
And they realize that, okay, let's see what we can get back for Kyler.
Right.
Sort of what we just saw happen with the 49ers to some extent. And at least there's a better sample size out there on Kyler Murray. So a team could say to themselves, we could build around him. And they say, okay, who do we need to just sort of keep this thing rolling on the tracks, but not win too many games while we move on from Kyler?
Baker.
I mean, he could carve out himself a nice little Chase Keenum-esque run for the next several years as a bridge quarterback. That is
I love
the
it
thing
when Bill
now.
supports what I say with like data and much more detail. I just said Baker's Baker. We know what it is. Bill just told you exactly what he is. He's a watered down version of Gardner Minshew who can bridge you to the 3rd pick in the draft.
Yeah,
Well done, my friend. Well done.
I saw him play against Pittsburgh in a preseason game. He was making some short passes, good.
That's what he does.
But if he ever had a long pass, I didn't see it. So
he is a made-to-order West Coast offense backup quarterback.
Exactly. That's it.
All right. So, Bill, what about the Falcons? What do you have any viewpoints on what's going on with the Falcons?
I have a lot of viewpoints on what's going on with the Falcons. So I break down. Of course, now we're getting sort of the 53. It'll still change some more, but we're getting close to the 50. What the actual 53 will be. So I do a bunch of roster analysis from 1 year to the next. And when I look at teams that have done, so far at least, the best jobs at fixing, not just sort of painting over, but fixing some of the problems they had before. The Falcons defense last year was hilariously bad. And they had physical mistakes, they had mental mistakes, they got pushed around. Like all the ways your defense could be bad, they managed to do it. Gave up big plays. Teams could run the ball on them pretty much at will at times. They couldn't get pressure on the quarterback at all. I mean, I guess it'd be easier to say the things that he didn't embarrass themselves trying to do on defense. They have made a lot of significant changes, both in terms of the talent, but also in terms of the attitude they have on defense. They're probably going to be one of the most, if not the most improved defenses in football. Their offense didn't look bad last year. It was a bit stuck in the mud sometimes just because they trimmed back on so much of what they do when they started playing the younger quarterbacks. But now he's more comfortable. Desmond Ridder may or may not be good, but he doesn't have to be that good. They've got a lot of – I really like their roster on offense. They have a budding superstar in Drake London. They just drafted Bijan Robinson, who, Donald Hayes could basically give you a word, like paint a word picture poem of why he has a chance to be amazing. Tyler Algier went, I think, for 1,067 yards as a rookie, and he's now the backup. I like their other wide receivers. And if it's going to happen, I think it is going. Well, let me rephrase that. It did sort of already kind of happen for their very special young tight end, and I think it's going to go back to happening. I think all the people who predicted that this guy's going to be super special are going to be proven right again. So they've got a lot of really good young players on offense, and their defense, which was, as I said, spectacularly bad at times last year, will have the occasional bad week. Don't get me wrong, but I think will at least be a middle of the road defense. And middle of the road for them on defense might be enough for them to be a legitimate threat to win their division.
Good. So, Don, with the Cowboys, Trey Lance, we talked about that earlier back with Tiffany, but he's asking, is this Jerry's Manziel's revenge?
Manziel's.
But what can you tell us about the Cowboys 53, Trey Lance, and any impact that trade has on Dak Prescott's time in Dallas?
I think that trade is going to be very detrimental to the locker room. First of all, the Cowboys weren't in dire need of a quarterback. I mean, they have Dak, and I've said before, Dak is he's above average. He's not going to the Super Bowl, but Cooper Rush is a capable backup. I don't know why you'd blow a fourth-round draft pick on a kid who hasn't been proven. Now, Trey Lance might be the next, Joe Montana. I don't know. But this to me, this is an example of Jerry Jones just throwing money after the shiny object out there. And I just wonder what he's thinking now. There is a good chance, or a slight chance that Jerry Jones will strike lightning, and Trey Lance might be, like I said, the second coming Joe Montana or Bradshaw or Tarkenton, but I have my doubts. The kid has talent, but it's not proven. He's coming from, North Dakota State, which gave us Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz had 2 good solid years in the NFL, and then I can tell you where Carson Wentz is right now, to be honest. So, yeah, he's rolling the dice on this one.
He's in a duck blind right now, Don.
Does anyone know where Carson Wentz is? I don't know.
He's in a duck blind. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think I'm even joking. I think he's literally like on a hunting trip.
So, and what do you think of the 53, Don?
Dallas is 53? Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-oh. There we go.
The what?
Their roster. Their roster. Their 53-man roster.
I missed. Like I said, they know what they're looking at. They've been through training camp. They should have an idea of where they're at. I don't think. Adding 1 or 2, guys to this is not going to make a huge difference. They're still looking at, maybe a 9-win season. So I don't know.
Okay.
All right. So before we get to the Lions, I'm just going to hit you with a couple questions. Whoever wants to tackle it, we'll kind of do this rapid fire type. So,
Sweet.
With quarterback Justin Herbert and the Chargers wide receiver core averaging 6.7 air yards per throw last season, which was the 3rd fewest in the league, is former Cowboy offensive coordinator Kellen Moore tailor-made for this offensive unit? Who wants to tackle that?
I'll take a shot at that.
Okay.
Ironically, he's going to help Austin Eckler a great deal. If you're a fantasy football guy, get all the shares you can of Austin Eckler. Kellen Moore was a guy that is from Prosser High in Eastern Washington. Showed up on campus. He only had a few offers, some Division II offers, some FBS offers, and one offer at the FBS level, the only FBS offer he had, because he almost was Eastern Washington. He was very close to going to Eastern Washington. He got a late offer from Boise State. When he shows up to his visit, when he starts talking to the coaches, he already knows their offense. And they're wondering, how do you already know our offense? He's talking about what they do here and the tags that they use on their version of post wheel and all this stuff. It's like, oh, I found it. I found a downloadable PDF of it. I've been studying it. That's who Kellen Moore is, right? He's been a football nerd since he was 16. Maybe before that, but since 16 that I know of. I've studied his entire career from that point forward. And he's going to look at that team and say, oh, yeah, I mean, Justin Herbert's fantastic, but our greatest ability to put the defense in a bad situation is to make Austin Eckler a superstar. And now when we throw the ball to all these 6'3", 6'4", and in the case of Kenyon Allen, just 6'2", receivers on the outside and sometimes in the slot, we're going to get – you could tear apart that 6.7 air yards foolishness, because that's going to be out the window where we're daggering people off play action. But, yes, the biggest change is going to be in the life of Austin Eckler. He's going to get the ball in his hands a lot, early and often.
Right.
And so, yeah, watch out for that.
All right, cool. So next question. Raiders and running back Josh Jacobs agreed to a 1-year contract up to $12 million. Do you think this is Josh's last year as a Raiders running back? Demetrius, or?
Yes. So I think players take this stuff very personally. And we're all in this era of running backs don't get treated fairly. Oh, that's great. If he's free agent after this, he's not coming back. Them guys don't forget that. Got a long memory. He will be motivated to go somewhere else, even if he takes less money to go somewhere else. Go somewhere else and show them they were wrong. Bill talks about pettiness a lot. This was contentious. This was not some amicable thing. He truly believes the organization doesn't value his contribution. He is probably right. But the league has decided they don't give a damn about running backs once they get 900 carries or whatever, 1,000 carries, whatever the magic number is. And I think he's getting close to that. But he'll go somewhere and prove him wrong. He took this money, and now he might actually go. I've never said the word, so I'm going to try it. Bill will fix it. Revenge-demption? Is that how you say it?
Yes, revenge-demption.
He may try and go revenge-demption this year, have a really good year this year, and still walk just to make the point, because that's how petty athletes can be.
All right, cool. Next one. The Cardinals cut quarterback Colt McCoy. Quarterback Murray starts the season on the PUP list. The new offensive coordinator, Dre Petzing, will be calling plays for the first time in his career. Should we start the tanking for Caleb bandwagon here? So the bottom line is, whoever answers, the Cardinals going to tank this season?
Let me start first, and because it'll be plenty left. I don't fundamentally believe in tanking. So if you have I'll let somebody else do that part. I don't think players that play at this level are the best in the world. Guys in the NFL, the last guy on the bench of the worst team is an exceptional athlete. You don't reach that level of greatness if you have a motor that you can turn down or turn off. I don't know how you walk in the room as a coach and say, guys, go give me 75% effort. Ready, break. Can't do it. These guys are too good. They don't know how to do that. Are you telling me a GM could tank? Maybe. Could they hide a guy on PUP or say a guy? When those dudes go out on the field, unstoppable killing machines, another Bill, they don't know how to go out there and give half effort. Hey, first of all, that's dangerous. That shit will get you hurt. More than that shit will get you hurt. Guys are always going to try and win. So now a GM can just not draft well or not get you talented if you're tanking, but that's going to get him fired. So somebody else will be drafting Caleb anyway. I don't think tanking exists at the professional level in any sport, because those dudes that get to that level are the best of the best of the best. The best of the best of the best. They don't know how to tank. The athletes on the field they don't know how to tank. So I don't even believe in tanking. But All that being aside, if somebody thinks the Cardinals are doing it, feel free to explain it to me. I'll listen.
All right, Don or Bill, anything to add to Demetrius's point?
I don't know if they're tanking, but when you a week ago, Colt McCoy was penciled in as the opening game starter, and then you cut your starting quarterback. That's like that's someone under the influence. That's what that is.
But do they need to tank? Aren't they just bad? Aren't
Okay,
they just a bad football team that doesn't need to? Go ahead, Bill. Sorry.
I would say play a few games before you start tanking. Let's see if you can win some games with Colt McCoy.
Okay, so I would just remind people, how did their season end last year? Their coach already knew he was fired. They had the worst roster in the NFL, and how'd they end their season last year? With a W, right?
With a W. They won that game. Yeah.
Right. They won their last game of the season.
Blew the draft pick and got fired.
Right. With a coach who was already fired. He'd already been told he'd been fired. So, as Demetrius pointed out, the first of all, you never know which play is your last as an NFL player. If you ask a guy, hey, can you go out there and suck today? I mean, he's going to punch you in the throat. I mean, like, you're probably. The very thought. You talked about guys feeling disrespected, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine the reaction you would get from somebody when you think about how difficult it is, the things you put yourself through to play one game in the NFL, How many times you've had to wake up at, 0 dark 30 for workouts, how much film study you had to do, all the things you do to try to get on a 53-man roster. It's like incredibly, the odds against it are so far against. I mean, it's Powerball lottery odds just to suit up. And you say, hey, could you not be your best today?
Yeah.
No, it's impossible. Now you can make decisions that indicate that the future is more important than the present. And we have seen teams do that. And the Texans probably are prioritizing the future over the present. But you never, ever, 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 as a player, as a coach, as anything in the organization, as the parking lot attendant, go out there thinking, let's suck today. Like, everybody's trying to win.
To your point, Bill, is every time a player goes out on the field, their market value is going out there.
Exactly. That's team.
And so there's no incentive for a player. Now, they may make a business decision sometimes. Like Deion Sanders made a lot of business decisions
on a tackle. Yeah, exactly.
But that's still his market value. You know, he's keeping himself healthy.
Tape done live.
And so to your point, I don't see players doing that. But as both you and Don and Demetrius said, the organization could make decisions. And so, like, for example, cutting Colt McCoy, is the team stronger for that with Murray on the PUP list? So the team can make decisions that
Cardinals are going to suck anyway. Cardinals are going to suck anyway. Colt McCoy might have won them a game or two. They're going to draft top 3, and cutting Colt McCoy doesn't change much of that.
All right, I like Colt McCoy just fine, but he wasn't going to make them a top 12 team.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, so on to the Rams. Kelly Stafford says her husband is struggling to gel with his young Rams. Do you think it was appropriate for her to air their pillow talk? And do you think this will affect team morale? Who wants to tackle that one?
I'm going to eventually get to it. I'll let Bill go. I love number 9. Everybody knows how I feel about number 9. That was my quarterback for 12 years, but I'm going to let Bill go first.
So I've been reading a lot of things on Twitter/X regarding people's reactions to this. And there's a lot of, well, it's frankly some plain old misogyny mixed in with some of the reactions that I've seen. People, just like when Gisele Bundchen says some of the things that she said, and people have excoriated even Brittany Mahomes at times over some of her statements. Her loyalty isn't to the Rams. She didn't marry the Rams.
Right.
She married her husband. Her loyalty is to him. And while I wonder why people even bother putting a microphone in the face of someone's spouse in these situations, but they got what they wanted, right? They got some very virally clickbaitly. I mean, this is like, shout out to whoever it is that asked the question that got this whole thing going, because maybe they got a little something extra in their pay packet, but it wasn't really a secret either. Like, do you think the 22-year-olds on the team thought they were clicking with him? It's like, what do you mean? What? We aren't, like, he's on a rebuilding team. He's 37?
36, 37, yeah.
Okay. I think he turns 36. I think he turns 37 later.
Exactly.
So I mean, there's that meme with Steve Buscemi, right, with the skateboard over his shoulder and the hat turned sideways. Hello, fellow kids. There's clearly, and his T-shirt says "music band" or something like that. But yeah, he's on a rebuilding team now. He's had this happen to him before, but he was younger the last time he went through this. He's now, in the last couple of years of his career, surrounded by a lot of young people. The team that he thought he did sign up for to be a part of is largely gone, like 88-point-something% gone. I think you could fit all the holdovers from the Super Bowl team in a, what they call it, subcompact car. Like, it's a very small number of survivors. So I'm sure he has mentioned to his wife, man, I mean, I knew we'd have to go through some tough times, but I didn't think it would fall apart this quickly, or however he probably put it to her. And he did say, probably at some point, I don't understand these kids, something like that. Like, I don't know what they're, why they are this way, why they do what they do, why they act this way. That's not surprising. He is old enough to be something. Maybe not quite their father. Well, no, maybe.
No, he's not. He's not.
Not quite.
He ain't that old.
But he's their cool. He'd be their cool. Well, not so cool uncle, I guess. But yes, it's not surprising.
Yeah, the problem.
And James mentioned that it was actually on her podcast.
It's her podcast. Yeah, that's the thing.
Oh, okay,
so here's the thing, though. First of all, everybody knows I love number 9. What might not be well known, I love Mrs. Number 9 too. Kelly's been like this from day one. She's exactly. She's been like this from day one. And I have a particular affinity for anybody who's ever dealt with brain cancer. Side note. But Kelly's been this way from day one, and I love it. She's got the podcast. Matthew has never come out and ever had an issue with anything she said. And the funny thing is, what happened was somebody called him sir. Somebody in the locker room called him sir. And so, somebody called me, so I'd come up and go, this little, I put on my black socks and my sandals and go, babe, this little bastard called me sir. Right? Now, I'm sure he didn't do it that way, but somebody called him sir. And I think it probably took him back a little bit because he's 36 years old. And he probably thought, wait, what? We're equals. We're teammates. And that's kind of the thing I think she conveyed. I listened to her podcast. Her podcast is fantastic, actually. Yeah. I listen to it a lot. She is, as Bill said, the number one thing takeaway. She is fiercely loyal to Matthew. Fiercely loyal to Matthew. She didn't marry the Rams. She didn't marry the Lions back in the day. She married Matthew. And that is, I'm a big Kelly. I'm a big Matthew fan. I'm a big Kelly fan. Her podcast is good. They called him sir. What is she supposed to do? She's got to talk about that, man. He comes home. He was mad. But Stafford don't really do mad because he's Matthew Stafford. His mad is like, dang it. Right? That's the best he's got. So she probably thought, wait, they called you sir? I'm not married to a sir. They got babies. They got small kids, and they're calling their husband sir. Right? So I thought, I listened to it because I've listened to it plenty of times in the past. And like I said, her podcast is good. This is very consistent with who Kelly Stafford is and has always been. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it every day.
Yeah, I think one thing is, and I don't think it's about the team. I don't think it impacts team morale because all these players understand, and now more and more active players have their social media platforms where they're getting out there in their podcasts. Cam Hayward has his podcast. And these guys know that sometimes you have to be a little bit provocative in order to get clicks. So I think that the players themselves kind of get it.
Right.
And,
Cam Jordan
and I
is
think for Matt Stafford, I mean, as long as hey, the offense, the receivers are where they need to be to catch the ball, his offensive line is protecting him.
Yeah.
I think that they're fine.
And I think if you're
Right.
Kelly Stafford and you have a podcast, the Kelly Stafford podcast, are you going to get on there and never talk about Matthew? That doesn't work for me, right?
No.
If I'm listening to the Kelly Stafford podcast, I expect you to maybe mention what's going on in the life of number 9. And that's all she did. I thought it was refreshing and fantastic. I loved it. I loved it.
All right. So, and then we might have to ban Demetrius from this question.
Yes, you do.
Do the Packers' domination of the Bears continue?
Yeah, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Bill, go for it.
Don or Bill, what are your thoughts there?
I mean, I think the team split. So I guess technically speaking, I guess the answer is no. I think the team split. I think that they end up, each one having one win in their season series this year. Jordan Love is good. And I know, certain people don't want to hear this, but Jordan Love's good. And he's going to get better. He's good, and he's going to get better. Maybe not Hall of Fame level, but, if he is another Hall of Fame level quarterback, I mean, people are going to start to wonder what the hell is in the water for that draft room that they have in Green Bay. But I've watched a lot of Jordan Love. I watched a lot of him at San Jose State. I've watched a lot of him in the pros. He can, first of all, really good athlete with a very strong arm. He reminds me of a slightly smaller and more athletic version of Josh Freeman, but more in love with the game, right? Josh Freeman was a guy, and I don't want to psychoanalyze people too much, but he was a sensitive young man. He really had things. He had to be coached a certain way. When he produced at a high level. He was, on his way. I think he was a number 2 or number 3 in the Rookie of the Year voting. I think his rookie season, and then it was all over in about 4 years. But Jordan Love has the things you look for. They have a pretty darn good defense. They could be one of the top running teams in the league if they would just, and maybe they will be. I think this might be the year they commit to the run and really stick with it. But all that being said, I think they split with the Bears, and I think they end up, fighting for second place.
All right. And Don, did you want to add anything to that? Any?
Well, I think the Bears are ascending right now, but they need to get their licks in while they can, because Green Bay, like Bill said, Love he's up and comer, and he has a learning curve, so the Bears need to take advantage of that, because that won't last very long.
Yeah, I think it's the Bears have a little bit of an opportunity this season. We'll see. We'll see if they take advantage of it or not. All right. So then now next one, Justin Jefferson ranked number 2 overall among the top 10 players, not wide receivers, players.
Yep, players. Yep.
Is this too high for any wide receiver?
I'll take that.
Well,
no, it's not.
Yeah,
He's that good. He's that good.
Yep.
He can
Yep.
impact the game that much. And I'll let Bill have the rest. That guy is a guy that you're having nightmares about Tuesday and Wednesday night as the DC and the defensive backs coach, and you are game planning for on Wednesday afternoon. He's that good. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. He doesn't look like a guy like Andre Johnson or Calvin Johnson. He's an above average. He's a good size wide receiver, but he looks younger than he is, first of all, right? You look at him, it's like, oh wow, you still you still in college.
Right.
Right. You look like a college kid. It was like, oh, you look like rising sophomore wide receiver Justin Jefferson. That's what he looks like when you see him. Like you think he should still be, heading to anthropology class or whatever. But it's like the Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp level route running, but with the straight ahead speed of, he ran 4.42, 4.43 at the size he is. He's got elite body control. Not good, not very good, elite body control. I mean, he could do things with his body that guys 5'10", 5'11" struggle to do, and he's 6'2" and a half.
Yep.
And though, like I say, he's not, like I said, Andre Johnson or Calvin Johnson, but he's like 213, 214 pounds. So he's big enough that smaller guys, when they try to play that jam game with him, he tosses them to the side and reminds them that he gets down in the gym too. So when you take his combination of size and speed, elite level route running, he tracks the ball beautifully. I have to check to see if he has a baseball background or not, but he tracks the ball beautifully. He can do that late hands thing, right? Where he does nothing to show you the ball's on him and then boom, right? And then snatches it. I mean, he's got all the stuff, man. I mean, I can't really find a weakness in his game. He's a decent downfield blocker. I mean, it's all there. All the stuff you want is there. Good after the catch, good before the catch. High football IQ, knows when to settle it down versus zone and run through it versus, like, he's got it all. It's all there. I know some people love Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill is super fun to watch, but if you said which one would you take to start your franchise, I'm taking Jay Jettas over Reek the Freak. And I really like Tyreek Hill, but the more complete receiver is Justin Jefferson. Absolutely. Justin Jefferson is the guy who is going to supplant. I mean, at one point I had Devontae Adams up there, but he's going to supplant Devontae. I mean, maybe at some point last year in my mind, he supplanted Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams is still amazing. Don't get me wrong, but Jettas is everything that he is, but faster. Oh, good God, he's good. So if you wanted to move him down a slot or two, I wouldn't be mad either, but 2 seems fine to me.
I have no issue. No.
Yeah, that's what I find fun, because it's become such a quarterback-centric league. I'd love to see a player from a different position that can impact the game. Yep. T.J. Watt or Lawrence Taylor, outside linebackers, Reggie White, defensive line.
Justin
running backs
Tucker,
like
right?
Barry Sanders or Jim Brown. I mean,
yep.
And it's fun to watch, or Ed Reed at safety, when you have players from different positions that can literally impact the game. I think that's cool. Rod Woodson back in the day. Yep. He's still the all-time, aside from all his defensive work, he's the all-time punt and kick returner for the Steelers.
Yep.
I mean, he was ridiculous. Anyway,
he was ridiculous.
I agree, and I'd like to see when that type of thing happens. I think it's good for the league. So we're heading down the stretch here. So Demetrius, tell us about the Lions 53 and how they're stacking up.
So this is unique. They've never been so good that this was like this. Like in most years, we're worried about starting spots, rotational spots. The conversation in Metro Detroit is about the kicker. That's how good the Lions are. Now, they did some interesting stuff. They only kept 2 quarterbacks. Right. They only kept 2 running backs and a fullback. They kept 12 defensive linemen. I am reading it multiple ways. 12. So, like, part of it is they love the talent they have on the defensive line. I think it is now at a point where when you get to this point, you have to think about, who do I think can sneak through waivers that I can get back on the practice squad? And I think they were making decisions like that. And they cut a couple of guys. They eventually got back. Running back named Craig Reynolds, for good example of that.
Cuts State.
Exactly. Kept a rookie wide receiver out of North Carolina, just a speedster, who caught a crossing route against Jacksonville. No, who did we play last? Their game the other day, and just left everybody. His name's Antoine Green. I think the kid's got a future, right? So, but they kept 12 defensive linemen because I think what they're saying is, we fixed our secondary. Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, organic growth of Kirby Joseph, Tracy Walker coming back from injury. They love. Bill talked earlier about some team with a really bad defense. He could have been saying the same thing about the Lions. We were getting gashed and we were giving up everything. They went out in the offseason and addressed the secondary. Now what they've decided is both Aquara brothers, Romeo and Julian, are healthy. Charles Harris is back healthy. Aiden Hutchinson was good as a rookie. He's going to be better year 2. Steal of any draft ever is a kid named James Houston. You'll figure out who he is later. I don't need to tell Bill. Bill knows who James Houston is. James Houston, I won't even do it. Okay, so 12 defensive players was an interesting thing for a 53-man roster. They kept some young players. The Lions are a young, talented team. They are young and they are talented. I don't think we need a third quarterback. Jared Goff's that good and he stays that healthy. And we signed Teddy Bridgewater. Now we're gonna bring somebody, right? Hendon Hooker's gonna get stashed away. He gets a red shirt this year. Maybe not all year. We'll see. I like what they did. They keeping 12 defensive linemen screams, we want to make it difficult for the other team's quarterback. And that's how you win games. Your quarterback plays well and you make life miserable for the other guy. So the kicker is the big question. If you ask me what's my biggest concern, it's kicker. And that screams something very, very important. We're debating the 5th wide receiver and the 6th corner and the kicker. I'm not worried about the top 38 spots on this roster, top 40 spots on this roster, which is a great feeling as a Lions fan. I've never been in this position. So I'm very happy with the 53. And they took care of the practice squad quite a bit today.
Yep.
Nice. All right. So, and I'm going to be interested in your responses to this question. Lamar's contract, Lamar Jackson, the addition of Odell, and the drafting of wide receiver Zay Flowers have all made headlines for the Ravens. But is the hiring of the former Clowns and Georgia offensive coordinator Todd Monken going to be their highest hurdle? So that they have a new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, Don Hayes, how do you feel about the quote unquote rat birds is what I think he calls them?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Well, just let me say, Todd Monken's a hell of a football coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's legit. And on a personal note, Todd Monken was the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma State that made the offer to my nephew to play at Oklahoma State.
Nice.
So Todd Monken's been in my brother's house. And he's I actually got a chance to talk to him myself, and he's very intense. So if you notice, wherever he goes, not necessarily as a head coach, but as an offensive coordinator, the dude wins. He puts up some potent offenses. So whoever gets him as offensive coordinator is going to have some success.
Awesome.
Maybe not with the Houston Texans, but I mean, everyone has their limitations, right?
No, he's in Baltimore. He's in Baltimore.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. I'm saying, but
James.
Oh, you're saying when he gets hired as the Texans coach?
I said he's a great offensive coach, so they have success wherever he goes, except for probably
unless
the
he goes to
Texans.
Texans. Yeah, right. I got you. Yeah.
Or the Cardinals.
All right, and then James added, Monken runs a 3 wide receiver setup, which I didn't know that. Lamar says he wants to pass, but will his instincts overtake his desire to pass? Is he going to end up running when he has somebody downfield he can pass?
What do you think, Bill? How does Lamar manage his natural instinct to run?
I mean, you can't go for being a team that was one of either the only or maybe one of 2 that was roughly about 50-50. Almost every other team in the league is, 58, 61, 62%, pass. So I don't think they're going to completely junk all, because they were a pain in the butt to defend. Partially because teams don't just load up and bang on you in the run game like that anymore. So you're just not used to it. It's not somebody teams told them they're not 1972. So that was the first thing. They're going to keep some of that stuff. And by having such a talented stable of running backs, which certainly helps them, especially since injuries are pretty much a fact of life at that position. Then you look at what Coach Monken's going to do to create and exploit space. And that was my only real issue I have with the previous staff, particularly, talking about offensive play design, offensive play calling. There were times that everything would be right there. The quarterback would execute, perfectly in terms of, what the footwork is and putting the ball where it's supposed to be and things like that. And then there'd be somebody would make a mistake somewhere that made the whole thing fall apart. I think that a lot of that stuff's been being fixed or has been fixed. I have higher hopes.
Nice.
Everything okay there?
Yep.
Dave?
He was clearing up.
Yep.
We can talk bungles. I don't talk bungles. You guys can have that one.
Well, my one point about this matchup here, I think it makes the Ravens extremely dangerous because it's like a built-in run pass option, but not the run pass option where he's deciding whether to hand off to a running back. It's his decision. Do I run, or hey, do I got Odell streaking down the field? I'm going to pull up and zing it down there as defenses are coming up to defend him. So I think it makes the Ravens extremely dangerous. I'll be at the game October 5th up in Pittsburgh. So hopefully Pittsburgh can
Bill
manage.
talked about Justin Herbert's air yards earlier. I wonder what Lamar's air yards have been and what they are this year under Monken. I think there might be a dramatic improvement there too.
Yeah. All right. So now with the Bungles, they cut the backup quarterback Simeon. Burrow still has not come to terms on an extension. Do you think that the Bengals will make Joe Burrow the highest paid quarterback in the NFL?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Because he's next. And it's not really and he might be the best. Maybe. You could debate that. There's always debate. I like, what's his middle name, Bill? Patrick what?
Oh, Patrick Levon Mahomes II.
I like Levon Mahomes II personally. But the way contracts work is next guy. Next man up. And Burrow's going to sign the next one, so he's going to have the biggest contract.
Right. Joseph Lee Burrow is going to at least temporarily reset the market, and then Josh Allen's going to come behind him and then reset them. Yeah, that's how it works.
It's the NFL thing, not for long. They usually talk in terms about your longevity.
That's a good call.
Case, how long are you the highest paid?
Till the next guys. I remember when Matthew Stafford was the highest paid quarterback in the league. It was like 6 years ago, 4 years ago. I don't know. It wasn't that long.
Right.
All right. So I had the Steelers.
Yep.
The Steelers went down to 50. They made some interesting decisions. Their initial 53-man roster had 2 punters on it. How many teams keep 2 punters on their initial 53?
Look at Don's face.
Leave it to the con master, Omar Khan. He literally pulled off 2 trades. I mentioned Kendrick Green before, but he also traded Kevin Dotson, who started all 17 games last year, played every single offensive snap last year as the starting guard.
How do you do?
And was able to trade him to the Rams, where they exchanged draft picks. It was like the Steelers got, I think, the Rams' 4th round draft pick for their 5th, and then in 2024, and then in 2025, the Steelers will get the Rams' 5th draft pick for their 6th. But they're actually building up draft capital that way. Okay. Now, why can the Steelers do that? Omar Khan earlier had signed Solomalo from the Eagles, and they've upgraded the position. Literally every position group, and I'm not going to go through every position group, but every position group is improved. Couple examples: quarterback, it's improved. So it's the same 3 quarterbacks, but Kenny Pickett is on his 2nd year.
Yeah,
he spent the entire camp last year as like 3rd at the beginning and got some second team snaps. Well, now he is the starter, and he's looked very good. You got to take preseason with a grain of salt because each team has their own agenda when they come in for a preseason game. So, for example, against Atlanta, they were playing against the 2s and 3s, and then the first 2 series, Kenny Pickett drove the team down, but they did what was expected of them. They did not play down to the Atlanta backups, and he's looking very good. The offensive line is much stronger, even though Kendrick Green 2 years ago starting center. Dotson the last 2 years, starting guard are gone, and he got draft capital. The reason he kept the punter is Omar Khan. I believe it was with Philadelphia that was looking for a punter. He was trying to make a last-minute trade, but they finally had to release Braden Mann, who has quite a foot. He can boom the ball. The defense looks very strong. You have T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith, but now you have Marcus Golden, who's just, I mean, in the Atlanta game, he just took an offensive lineman, and maybe it was their second team tackle, but he just tossed him aside.
Wow.
I mean, it was just like incredible. And then you have this young Nick Herbig, who is a little bit undersized, but I mean, I think he led the league in sacks in the preseason, but grain of salt. But he's a backup,
right?
And they look good. They look good there. The secondary is going to be interesting, simply because they have a lot of new players. They lost Terrell Edmonds and they lost Cam Sutton, and so then they got Peterson in, a number of other guys. So they have to work on their communications. And that's one of the things that Mike Tomlin said, that's why he played his ones in all 3 of the preseason games, but he wants them in there, and only for like a series or 2, but he wants them in there just to be in a stadium to work on their on the field communications. So the Steeler fan base, I think, is very optimistic. If they don't go to the playoffs, people are going to be very unhappy. But I got to say, Omar Khan has been a star. The meme that they had out there, there's Omar Little from
Wire.
The Wire,
yeah,
where he's going through the project, and then all the kids are scattering when they're saying, "Well, here comes Omar," and there goes all the GMs from around the league running away from him.
Nice.
So anyway, that's where we're at with the Steelers.
That's good stuff. Good.
So I guess we can go around the horn for final thoughts. Who wants to go first?
I'll start off.
All right.
So sometimes there's a confluence of circumstance, talent, greatness, and deep and almost unforgivable flaws. And Tyrus Raymond Cobb was all of those things. On this day in 1905, he made his Major League Baseball debut against Smiling Jack Chesborough. And as he did so many times, he hit a ringing, line drive double. A less aggressive base runner might have stopped at first, but he came out of the box knowing he was driving for a double, slid, got in there with the double. And, one of the so many hundreds of hits he recorded, he was a terrible, terrible person and did horrible, unnecessary things to people. Like, it's difficult even to understand what he got out of some of these things. Like, what was the allure for him other than maybe lording his status maybe over someone else? I'm not even sure what it is that motivates. But there's little, film or tape or whatever term we use, but there's a little bit, mostly towards the end of his career. The thing that I didn't know until I got a chance to sort of see him in action was he was much bigger than I thought he'd be. Over 6 feet tall, close to 6'1", in his prime, about 210 pounds. But even in later his career, he still moved well. He had, like I said, darn close to a perfect baseball player, but such a deeply imperfect person. And in some ways, he is a real symbol of the United States as a whole, right? The conflict, the talent, the greatness, and the deep and sometimes almost fatal flaw all at the same time. But yes, that is my final thought, is of Tyrus Raymond Cobb, who made his Major League Baseball debut on this very day 98 years ago.
Wow.
Nice.
Good stuff. Rep the Detroit Tigers. I love it, Bill. Thank you, sir.
I thought you would enjoy it, yeah.
Yes.
The Georgia Peach, isn't that what they call them?
That's amongst his many nicknames, yes.
Yeah. There's other ones that we can't say. Well, we can probably, but no.
Well, I guess it's after dark.
Bill was nice. He was a horrible human being. I'm going to be honest with you. That's coming from a Tiger fan. He was a horrible
sharpening his cleats for
yes, exactly.
Whenever he would,
spiking people.
So, Demetrius, how about your final thoughts?
Yeah. So normally I would do my final thoughts positive, celebrating glory, celebrating history or greatness. Nope, not this week. This week, I'm celebrating disappointment. I will say to you that HBO Films, as an entity, has put together some of the greatest sports documentaries I've ever seen. There are people who are fans of 30 for 30s. I would tell you my favorite documentary ever is called Ghosts of Flatbush. It's about the Brooklyn Dodgers. I think that is the best piece of documentary filmmaking ever. Ghosts of Flatbush is great. That's HBO, not a 30 for 30, right? So I am disappointed, not because of my personal disdain for he who shall not be named. They clearly decided they were going to do the Jets, and he is using this as some 6-week personal America, I'm not really an asshole tour. Guess what, bro? I'm not falling for the banana in the tailpipe. I know who you are. I know who you are. I'm not getting this, but oh, look at how good a leader he is. And oh, he's giving back money to you could have gave back money to the Packers last year and you could have kept Devontae Adams, you asshole. Sorry for the language. I would tell my producer on my personal podcast to get the button ready, but he's not here. So without Mike, there's no button to get ready. I
Hey,
know who you are.
Demetrius, stop candy coating it. Tell us what you really think.
Right, exactly. I know who you are. I've watched you for years do stuff to my team, do stuff to famous and well-liked women, to your own family. I know who you are. You're not fooling me. So you can do this cute little, but as Bill said earlier, petty don't go away. You can't hide petty. You can't even suppress petty. So when the shit hits the fan, we saw who you really were. Aaron Rodgers not a good guy. He is not. Don't buy this, New York. I hope they suck. And even worse, I want the Packers to do well. Do you know how hard that is for me to say? It's so hard. So thanks a lot for that, Aaron Rodgers. I'm rooting for the Packers now. Thanks a lot, buddy. That's my final thought. You immunized prima donna asshole. I hope they fail miserably. And I don't generally like to do negative final thoughts. I'll come back with some good stuff next week. I watched 15 minutes of Hard Knocks, promptly threw up, took some medication, and just said, that's it. I'm not going to watch that. You're not fooling me. I know who you are. So the 4-letter can buy it, and New York is king of everything. I get it. Ooh, it's a cute story. First of all, they're not going to win that division. They're probably going to, it might be 10 wins, whatever. And they're probably going to get their ass handed to them when they go to Buffalo, when they go to Kansas City, when they go somewhere. So I just wanted to end ugly. I wanted to end really, really bad because that's how I want his career to end. Yeah. And those are my final thoughts. Sorry, Don.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right, Don, how about you? Your final thoughts.
All right, so my final thoughts goes to the great game of poker. Yours truly. I'm going to back up just a little bit, and I'll keep this as short as possible. Back in 1985, I was part of my high school football team that is still the most successful team in that school's history. We went 3 rounds in the playoffs. Nice. And ever since then, me and my old teammates, we get together and do, we go hunting, play golf, whatever. Fish. Well, last weekend we rented a house at the coast on Rockport. Nice. And we had a Texas Hold'em tournament.
Oh.
So we had a $50 buy-in. The grand prize was, the winner was right at $700. And I made it to the final round.
Oh, God.
Me and my friend Matt Hasselbeck, who actually was my backup at defensive tackle. Nice. So y'all know how Texas Hold'em is played, right?
Yes, sir.
You got the cards on the table. You got 2 in the hole. You get to look. You get to play your cards. What's on the table. So yours truly has a jack and a 6.
Nice.
On the table are 2 jacks and a 6. Now, also on the table, along with the 2 jacks and 6, is a 7 and a 5. So.
Oh.
I see it coming.
So, final hand, I'm pushing all in. I got a full boat, jacks over 6s. Yep. I'm all in. I push it in, just like they do on TV. Matt does the same thing. I'm like, Matt,
Yep.
you're my friend. You fool. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Oh,
He did
I
it.
see this coming. I know exactly what's going to happen.
Balls. I got my jacks and my sixes, and that son bitch had jacks and sevens. His jack
Wow.
was close to walking away with $700.
Oh,
Oh,
So my
good
final
time,
thought,
good fun. All right.
it was fun, you know. We had a good shrimp boil afterwards, but I'm still kind of hurt because $700, that's kind of nice to have. You know,
That's close.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's
sir.
at least 6 or 7 trips to Cooper's Barbecue. So
Exactly.
final
That's some more
thoughts.
barbecue for us.
$700 still matters.
Exactly. What
All
you got,
right.
David?
Well,
It does.
What you got?
In Texas,
you know,
anyway.
my final
So that's my
thought.
final thought. I just thought you might enjoy a story of.
Good stuff.
All right. So sorry about talking over you there, Don. But yeah, my final thought is I'll call it expectations. So Tuesday, you know, we're beginning this past weekend, the NFL teams cut 1,184 players from their 90-man rosters. And a lot of those players probably didn't have a realistic shot, but they all had expectations. They were all out there. They've all worked very, very hard to get where they were, and they were cut. Now, today, the NFL teams are in the process of giving 512 of those players another shot at being on the practice squad. And what I really like is, you know, the old practice squad, when they had 10 players on there, is if you were called up to be activated, then you had to be placed on waivers in order to go back down to the practice squad. So a lot of teams were reluctant to do it because then they would lose that player,
Yeah.
right.
possibly. Well, now with the new rules, first of all, you can have some veterans, and before they were all younger players. Now you can have some veterans; they get a lease on life, on their professional life, and they've kind of relaxed the rules where you can come up 2 or 3 times where you can be protected. You don't have to go through the waiver process. But all of these players, you know, they have to exist that way. And I want to segue this into Mike Tomlin. He has what are called Tomlinisms up in the Pittsburgh area, and you probably heard a bunch of them. And the players love them. They have a clip of the players giving their favorite Tomlinism. Well, one of his Tomlinisms is it's not what you're capable of, but what you are willing to do. Yeah. That's one of his Tomlinisms. But he released a TikTok, which is kind of, Mike Tomlin is not a social media guy, but he did a short little TikTok, and he was explaining what he meant by that. And he said that we, you know, the players, the people, even outside in our professional life, we normally set our expectations based on what our capabilities are. Yeah. It's like, hey, I can do this, and therefore I should be compensated for those capabilities. And he's saying that's the wrong way to look at it. He says what we should be doing is basing our expectations on the work that we put in, that it's the effort that should match your expectations. So there's a lot of people out there, and the reason he gives this to his players is he has all of these players are talented. I mean, even the 53rd player on the roster probably at one time was the all-time greatest player at his high school. Yep. But it's what you're willing to do, the amount of effort that you're willing to put in there, and what you're willing to do to realize that potential, because that's what capabilities are. They're potential, not realized potential, and that's what the effort is. So that's my final thought. Just wanted to leave it with Tomlin.
Hey, good job tonight, David. Our fearless leader fell off, and I feel like you did a great job. I just wanted to let you know.
Yep.
Hey, thanks, and I really appreciate you guys' patience with me. But look forward to next week.
Absolutely.
Yes,
sure.
sir.
Have a good one, guys.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Have a good night, everybody.
Ciao. I'm just waiting to see if James comes back on. How have you been doing? You still on, Bill?
Yeah, I'm usually James says something to me about
Yeah,
something.
you guys, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yes.
but now you froze.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Right, man. Bill, I see you used to link the stream, so